All right, Representative Adams.
Here.
Bailey. Here. Baker.
Here.
Casper.
Here.
Kasari. Ooh, I'm going to say it first 4 different ways. Chase.
Here.
Collin.
Here.
Crockett Hubbard.
Here.
Dean Schindrott.
Here.
DeSiller Fleming.
Here.
Driscoll. I know she's here. Eben.
Nancy's here.
Yeah, I know, I saw her.
Yeah.
Okay. Eben, are you here?
Eben, oh, sorry, usually you do me at the end.
I know.
Here,
I
sorry.
changed it up. I did alphabetical.
Sorry.
Fitzgerald. Flax.
Here.
Portner.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
Frickman. Gauthier David. Gauthier Lauren.
Here.
Gustafson. Hanscom.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Katowski.
Here.
Lambert.
Here.
Luck. Mello Miller.
Here.
Merritt.
Here.
Osman.
Here.
Perry. Powers Kristen. Powers Sean. Richards.
Here.
Rusk.
Here.
Selva. Starkley.
Here.
Stevenson.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Washington.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Whitehouse.
Here.
And Whitney.
Here.
That's 34 at roll.
34, we do have a quorum. And can we please rise for a moment of silence? Representative Fortner, would you please lead us in the pledge? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look through them? Can I get a motion to approve, please? Representative Chase had a motion. Is that seconded by Representative Lambert? Okay. Is there any questions or discussion or clarification on these minutes?
Other than typos.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As it notes, I wasn't in attendance at that one, but I am still at the top. So,
You know, I have to clarify to the body, I know that you see your name, that is the entire RTM listed at the top.
excellent.
And then, so if you read in the minutes, it'll say who's absent.
Great.
So you're always going to see your name at the top, because that's the full body.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that. I have nothing else then.
All right. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of our December meeting. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, those minutes stand approved. Thank you. The next item are citizens' petitions, and this is the portion of the RTM agenda where the RTM welcomes comments from citizens. Each presentation should be limited to 10 minutes or less, and citizens should, if possible, submit written comments. Presentations should be limited to matters pertinent to Groton. The moderator or members through the moderator shall ask questions only in order to clarify the speaker's presentation. Responses may be given by the moderator and/or by the town manager. Citizens should make their presentations from the lectern and state their name and address for the record. Just one? Okay. All right. So our first speaker is John Davis. Come to this.
So, hi. My name's John Davis. I live in Groton at 198 Shore Avenue, and I'm here to talk about short-term rentals and my concern about them and that of many of my neighbors. About how much time do you guys allow for that?
10 minutes.
That much?
That's what it said. I just read it.
Oh, wow.
That's what it says here, and we only have two speakers.
Unless you change it.
We have two speakers. I think you know, please make it less than 10 or less.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, in Groton and like, so many other towns and cities and everywhere else around the country, short-term rentals are kind of really gaining in momentum as a trend or as a social thing. And of course, my daughter, among others, uses them almost exclusively. This isn't a family fight. So I'm aware it's very valued by some parties, but when it started happening in our neighborhood, we lived, 2 or 3 blocks from Eastern Point Beach. I kind of like the first one, I was kind of like, oh, I know about these, I've read about it. Oh, let's see. And then that particular house, which is diagonal from us across the street and advertises that it sleeps up to 15, I think on the Airbnb platform, what I would call a boutique hotel. I kind of watched all summer as they increasingly had very nice people, but lots of them for weddings, graduations, reunions, retirement parties, and that causes a lot of cars. And when they have events, invariably, that's kind of why they rent these places. It just causes, the word I use is they really descend on the neighborhood in sort of in an unusual way. But then as time went on, there was another house, and then somebody that lives in Groton but doesn't live there bought a house 2 doors down from us and now uses it full-time as what I call really a commercial lodging facility, a motel. And my read of, I know I'm here speaking to all the pieces of Groton, but I've studied most, because I live in the city, I've studied most the city zoning regulations, and I know the town has them and NOAC and so on. In general, my understanding, it really cutting across all these bodies, is unless it's allowed, it's not allowed, unless it's explicitly addressed in zoning as, oh, this can be, and these are the ground rules. For example, a bed and breakfast. Those generally are addressed and allowed with some rules, whatever they might be. Really all we're asking for is if the governmental bodies in Groton think they are to be preserved and allowed, that at least there be rules. I just want to go on the record as saying I think they're not legal, and that our zoning regulations don't allow them, so we don't understand the selective, if you will, lack of enforcement. Some zoning issues, whatever they might be, are very attentively paid attention to and worked on and managed, and others, we feel this is one of those issues, just kind of, we feel people are looking the other way, or it's just kind of uncomfortable, to confront one's neighbors about what they can or can't do with their home. After working on this for a few months, what I'm finding is that really what's behind part of this is, we used to all own homes because we wanted to live there. And what's happening now is literally it's becoming pretty favorable, evidently. I don't have any math for you or charts, but I think it's becoming pretty favorable for people to buy homes and not live there. And there seems to be a trend more short-term rentals than long-term rentals. Again, I don't have studies, but that's kind of what I've been gleaning. So one is there's a trend to buy, own, and not live there, and in fact rent it out for short-term, which means high rate of turnover. To be a little dramatic about it, I wrote down that it's starting to break up neighborhoods, and what I mean by that, Eastern Point, where I live, is kind of a good example. Increasingly, I can give you addresses, I'd have to do it in an email, but every time a house goes on the market, everybody kind of goes, and what's happened is, as often as not, houses have started to dip into this trade. And again, we don't even think it's allowed for in the city zoning regulations. It's a concern in many parts of Groton. Actually, I'm happy to be able to say this, that the city, it has been referred by the mayor council entity to working group 2, economic development subcommittee, so there's focus there on the issue. For the town, my understanding is the mayor or the council is making an agenda item, and I think it's on the 28th, So, a discussion will begin there and so on and so forth. NOANC, as you probably know by reading the paper, has been working on this. They haven't nailed it yet, but they drafted, floated the regulations that were proposed. People didn't like them, thought it might be overreach or whatever the case was, so they kind of retrenched. But my understanding is they will come out with regulations. I mean, no guarantee, but that's sort of my understanding of the process of where they're headed as a community. And then, interestingly, even Long Point, the association has a committee now on short-term rentals, and they're at the process of defining, is it an issue for us or not? So they haven't said, oh, something's wrong, but they've said, gee, is it an issue for our community? Because I guess they have some zoning oversight over that piece. So I'm happy to say all pieces of Groton are working on it. It's not just one part of town. To not be prickly about it, we just want to be on the record as saying we think, this is number 4, that we don't think it's really being actively stepped up to as an issue. Have an acquaintance, and he lives in Mystic, town, Mystic, and he did a formal complaint to the zoning enforcement officer about his understanding that a commercial activity, lodging activity next to him is illegal, doesn't follow the zoning regulations, all that, and the sum and substance of it was dismissed as having no merit, no basis. Similarly, I don't know if anyone's been following the discussions in the city, but the city attorney, the current sort of position, if you will, of the city on the record is that really nothing can be done at this time because of a person's right to rent out their home in any way, shape, or manner. Based on a 2001 court case, we think that's kind of old, out of date, and we challenge it. We do think waiting can hurt Groton, and what I mean by that is if we just put it off for another 5 or 10 years and kind of let all this, case material build. One of the things pointed out by, and this is just, there's a lot of material on this, but this economic, what is it called? The Economic Policy Institute did an article recently saying the single biggest potential cost imposed by Airbnb comes in the form of higher housing costs for city residents if enough properties convert from long-term housing to short-term accommodation. That's kind of self-explanatory. They said it, I didn't. They've been studying the issue. To begin to wrap up, towns across the country are moving ahead on this. Again, our viewpoint, our position is that something can be done about it.
You have 1 more minute.
Thank you. We can be proactive about it. And Hartford, West Hartford, Ledyard, actually, they haven't enforced it yet, I'm mistaken. Canton, Fairfield, Newington, Woodstock all have addressed it. And, the town hasn't vaporized. They have rules and they're living by them. South Portland, Maine has a really interesting approach to this, and it's just straightforward. They spell out the rules, and then they say this is the process to work with the rules. So in wrap up, thank you. Because you're the one entity, or one of the few entities we think that cuts across all of Groton, the different legislative bodies and all of that, we wanted to address you and just ask, if the sentiment is this doesn't have any merit, fine. If the sentiment is this is a concern in various neighborhoods or pieces of Groton, well, then we could use your help in working on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker is Ashley Coutu-Toole. Sorry if I mispronounced that.
Hi, Ashley Coutu-Toole, 113 Whitaker Drive. Good evening. I would like to thank you all for allowing the public to have the time here and speak to you and let you know about our concerns. My mom and I are Dunkin' Donuts franchisees here in Groton. We own 5 locations within the town of Groton and 1 location within the city of Groton. To give you a little bit of a background, so I've spoken at a couple of the town council meetings for those of you who have been there. So sorry if this is repetitive for you guys. But to give some background on the state of Connecticut and the business climate, Forbes just came out with their best states to do business in. Connecticut was number 43. We are 7th from the bottom. Our business costs are 10% higher than the national average, ranking us 45th in business cost. Number 31 in labor supply, and Forbes said that the regulatory climate and fiscal health rank among the worst in the nation. We're number 43rd in regulatory environment, and we're ranked the 49th state for entrepreneurs to start a business in. Connecticut's looking scary, and I ask that the towns try to do the best to mitigate what they can for the businesses. We're already operating in a very tough climate, and every little bit matters. Although sometimes it doesn't seem it, it does. As franchise owners, we are small business operators. I know that when you hear Dunkin' Donuts, you don't think small business, but it is. We're independently owned and operated. We pay Dunkin' Donuts franchise fees. We pay for the right to use their name, and we pay them for advertising. Every cost for our business comes from us and our business. Every product we buy, every remodel we do, all of our business expenses, the brand doesn't help with any of that. We are small business owners, just like any other restaurant here. We just have a big corporation who we pay to use their name. So I know that there is a lot of talk about the plastic ban ordinance that's currently coming forward in the town of Groton, and I just ask that you guys look at the business end of this. I know it's, sometimes I feel like we're villainized because this is about the environment and it is about doing what's right and it is about doing what's good. But I just want you to try to find a way to do that while also doing what's right for the businesses in this town. We do matter, we do want to have a voice, and as a franchise owner, we don't have options. I don't get to shop what paper cup I'm going to use and what cost. I get told what's available to me, and that's what we get to purchase. So we just transitioned to paper cups because the brand was doing it. So I said if we had gone through this ordinance 3 years ago, I wouldn't have had a cup. If we didn't have styrofoam cups, I wouldn't have had a paper cup to use. You'll see that we now have paper cups, but this is coming at a 5 to 10 cent cost per cup on us. We, now with the ban on straws, this would be a 550% increase per straw. So currently our straws are under a penny each. We're looking at a 2.5 to 3 cent cost on a straw now if we were to switch to the paper straws that the brand has available to us. And I'll tell you, they're terrible. I've used them. I don't know if anyone else has encountered with them. They're not good. You can't drink your coffee. The whole thing disintegrates. And I know that some businesses are saying, well, if you shop, you can get this. I don't have that option. And quite frankly, most of the paper straws really are not that great. And our customers are finicky. They're coming in and they're paying for a product and they're paying for a service. So something like that could lead them to go elsewhere. And we are in a very competitive business scape. You will see coffee is sold everywhere. We compete for every customer we have. And my mom and I have invested our livelihood in our businesses and in this town. This is what we've done. This is what I was raised in. We've been in business for over 30 years in Groton. So I know that there was a poll that went out in the day, and the question that was posed talks about a reduction in plastic use. And a lot of people were for it. I don't know many people would say, oh, I want more plastic to be used. But it didn't talk about a ban or how far this was going to reach and how far this was going to extend for those people to really gauge what this ordinance would mean. There are multiple towns in Connecticut who have had some sort of plastic ban or ordinance, but I know of 18 towns that had them. 14 of those 18, their ban is strictly on plastic bags, which the state is working on anyways. We all know we're not giving that 10 cents. We're bringing our bag. We will do anything. We will carry it out, like juggling everything all over the place before I pay that 10 cents. So what is it going to be when my customers are going to have to pay that extra 5, 6, 7 cents for that coffee? They're just not going to come to us. I know the town of Stonington, they banned plastic straws at sit-down restaurants. It's by request only at sit-down restaurants, but they didn't affect the businesses of fast food where we only give it to the customer that's getting the coffee beverage that goes with it. We just don't go, handing out plastic straws to everybody as they come through. Hamden went to a straw by request only. Norwalk had banned plastic stirrers and put straws by request. Westport has had a plastic bag ban since 2009. They just recently, in November, banned styrofoam and plastic straws and kind of an ordinance like Groton is looking at. I will let you know that in Westport, a medium iced coffee is $3.05. A medium iced coffee in Groton is $2.69. That's the landscape we're looking at when these types of changes come in. One of the things that I just see happening right now is we're not holding the people who are accountable responsible. Who's littering? Somebody who's throwing it out their window. They're putting it on the street. We have litter laws. Maybe they're hard, maybe we need to come up with something, but we're not holding the people responsible for the issue accountable. Instead, we're sitting here and we're trying to hold businesses accountable for an issue that isn't their problem. We have overflowing trash cans from the town. Maybe they need more pickups. Things like that. I know that the fishing industry is a huge contributor to the environmental issues in our ocean. So much of the pollution in our ocean is from those fishing boats and the fishing lines. So maybe we are a local community, we are a coastal community, and going and speaking to them and making them aware and asking them to pledge to be more aware when they're going out on their charters and they're doing things like that. Starbucks, they're testing a transition to get rid of their plastic straws. Their current straw and lid combination is 3.55 grams of plastic. Their new lid that has no straw is 4.11 grams of plastic. It is more plastic that's going to go out into our environment just so they don't have to have a straw in it. We are not against helping the environment or saving it or trying to do our part. I'm just asking that you guys find ways to help mitigate it for businesses, to help both sides get what they need and to understand it. And there was a town council member last night that grossly misrepresented our business, and it was very upsetting to be there and very upsetting to be disrespected in that way. And I ask that you guys please understand that we're not, just sitting here trying to say we want everything and we want to give nothing.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. We do a lot of things in the town of Groton. We love the town of Groton. We've appreciated doing business here, and we've enjoyed it. It's kind of a scary climate to look at where things are heading in the town of Groton for business and how people perceive business, especially those elected officials. Some of them really are there to support us, and some of you guys have spoken to us and have reached out, and it's been really great. And I do appreciate that support, and I just ask that you guys really do your research and really look at things and just don't take what you get told for granted. Just don't take a presentation, just take it as it is. Look for the facts, research yourself, because there's a lot of underlying things to the things that are said that would really give you more of a foundation before you make these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak under citizens' petitions? Liz Reyes Peck, I guess. Representative Fortner?
I have a question for the previous speaker. Is that
Okay.
all right?
Well, I think the time has kind of passed
Okay,
because
I'm
she's
sorry.
stepped down. Oh, you can ask it if maybe she can grab the mic real quick from.
I think I'm loud enough.
No, you need to be mic'd. You need to be mic'd to Representative Fortner.
I was wondering, in 1 month of your 6 franchises, how many plastic straws you might use?
So I have my information I did it based on a year, so that's just what I already have written down. For like a store, we ordered, sorry, it's gonna be on this side. We ordered 10 cases, which was about, of 10,000, so that would be 100,000 straws of that size, and 62 cases of 1,200, so that was around 74,400. So when I was looking at this, it would be like a roughly like $5,000 increase in cost just on the straws alone for us when we looked at what we ordered and the current cost compared to what it would be if we had ordered the paper straws at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, so 174,000 straws.
We ordered, correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Reyes Peck. I live at 81 Main Street. I wasn't really planning to talk this evening, but I think I have to respond here. I'm a co-chair of Groton Conservation Advocates. We are a local environmental group concerned with protecting Groton's environment. Ashley and I have been following each other around to meetings for the last several months, giving our different perspectives on a ban on plastics. Groton Conservation Advocates, GCA, our role in the plastic effort is that we did a lot of research on ordinances around the state and help to provide Groton staff and the council with examples of ordinances that were working. Plastics in the environment is a huge problem for the health of both the natural world and humans. We are basically, as a species, drowning in plastics today. We are sending 1 million plastic bags into Long Island Sound every year. And I don't know how many million straws which break down but never disappear. So plastics are accumulating in our environment at a huge rate. I think most of you have heard that there are huge areas of the Pacific Ocean now which are like giant islands of plastic. And yes, most of that does come from countries of Asia, but also most of those countries are now beginning to tackle their problem. And within 5 to 10 years, I think there will be a big solution. This is an issue that people are tackling everywhere. It really doesn't make sense for Groton to go backwards at this time. I am sympathetic to the issue that Dunkin' Donuts has raised, but I also want to point out that although the Economic Development Commission for the town of Groton hosted a business forum on this issue, which Dunkin' came, presented their case. There was not a huge turnout. There were very few speakers in opposition. And at the hearing that the council held, there were very, very few speakers in opposition, 2 or 3, compared to 2022 in favor of the plastic ban. So there is a lot of support for this. I also want to say that the council has tried to be responsive to the concerns that have been brought forward. For Dunkin's problem with straws, which is real, they made an adjustment in the ordinance to say that if people asked for a plastic straw, they could be given one. It wasn't a complete ban. Last night, McDonald's at the 11th and a half hour came forward with a concern about polystyrene and extruded polystyrene in the lids to cups, which apparently it's another kind of polystyrene, which none of us know anything about. And the council was quite accommodating and removed lids from the ordinance. So I think the council has been listening. I think that this is, Duncan's in a difficult transitional phase, but Duncan will catch up. They are eliminating styrofoam sometime in the next year. And people are passing bans on plastic straws. Towns are everywhere. And so Duncan will fix it. They will come up with a straw that works and is economical. It just may take a little time. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw another hand. Oh, Representative Merritt?
Yes, I have a question for the speaker.
Sure. Ms. Reyes Peck?
How many people were in opposition to the plastic ban at the Monday hearing, not the Tuesday council hearing, the Monday public hearing?
Monday hearing. Well,
The one that wasn't reported in the New London Day?
There was only one hearing on this ban.
And what was Monday night?
Please, this is not an aggressive
Okay.
courtroom. This is, you
I
can
didn't
ask.
say that.
You can ask questions for clarification.
Okay. I don't
That's
think
what
I
I'm
can
trying to
answer
do.
your question because I'm only aware that there was one hearing on this.
Well, I find that difficult to
Okay,
accept.
thank you. Representative Osman?
Question for the speaker, please.
Sorry.
So, what you're basically saying is, you know, on the Pacific, there is like a lot of trash coming from the Pacific, right? Is that what you were referring to a few minutes ago during your speech?
Yes, that's one issue, right?
All right. So, we know that that's not coming from the United States. It's not coming from
Right.
Groton, Connecticut, neither.
No,
It's coming from China and India.
right.
Okay. We can't control what China and India do.
No, but we can control what goes in Long Island Sound.
I understand that. Now, what was the research that you had done to reach out to these food ordinance or food services in regarding to presenting this whole thing? How many people? I guess let me rephrase that question. How many restaurants or food services did you reach out to regarding to this draft ordinance?
That is a outreach effort that the Conservation Commission did. And you're going to report? They're going to report on their outreach effort.
Okay. Let the record state that as of Monday, okay, this past Monday, I reached out to, between Saturday and Monday, I reached out to 30 different food establishments across Groton and Mystic. 15 of them.
This is point of order, accepted. This is
15
not
15
pertinent
of
to...
them.
This
Excuse
is-
me. I
You,
yield
this
back.
is not pertinent to the presentation. We are going to have a presentation from the Town Conservation Commission on this, and then that question will be pertinent. This is an organization that's an environmental organization. They're not reaching out. That's not their role. The people come and speak as citizens' petitions, and you can ask clarifying questions, but this is not a courtroom, okay? And we have points of decorum in our rules. Please refer to the rules that we've adopted at our last meeting, which remain in the current rules that we will adopt tonight, hopefully, or at least we will review. Thank you. Are there other questions for Ms. Reyes Peck? Remember, we are asking clarifying questions. We're not having an argument with speakers. We have one more speaker. I don't know your name. I apologize. If you would like to come forward. Or maybe there are others, but I saw one other hand. Hi.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jane Couteau, mother of Ashley Couteau, who obviously was speaking on behalf of Dunkin' Donuts. And there is...
Please state your address, too. Thank you for the record.
1064 Paquonic Road, Groton. So I do want to speak on behalf, I have 5 businesses in this town. I'm probably, not many of us have 5 businesses in this town. And I feel very upset that owning 5 businesses, I was not even contacted once, not even reached out to. I didn't know about any of this until the day of the town meeting. So in this report that this Conservation Commission is going to represent, there were some things about Dunkin' Donuts. Hopefully they're taken out because they were not, true. But on this, I feel that she should have reached out to more of us to get clearer facts and understanding of what exactly we do, what exactly goes on here. And in Stonington, they did pass an ordinance against plastic bags, but please note that they did not require the fast food service to do this. Understandably, our customers drink our drinks differently than you would in a simple restaurant. They go on long drives with them. They have straws in there for a long time. And like my daughter said, we are definitely not against, people fighting pollution. We believe in the same, we have the same respect for, the world that everybody else does. We're not against it. And I feel that that's how we're being represented, that we don't care. We just feel there's so much more that can be done besides attacking our straws and our business in the community than doing this. And I feel like I said last night at the meeting, they're doing it because they can attack my straws. Why not go to the fishing industry, which I love also? But there's a lot more than, it's hard to do business now. And I think there's not enough understanding of how hard it is to do a business now with, the minimum wage going up. And I just hope we can all work together and maybe follow Stonington, although I think everybody's mind's made up. But that would make much more sense to me to follow Stonington and most other communities. And please, like my daughter said, what you're about to see, please look at the facts. Because what we discovered after and during this presentation, they're not all facts. I'm not sure exactly where they get them. And to reach out, if we can just be respected as business owners, to be reached out to. And I would like to have the people understand here and ask the question, what businesses were reached out to? And I think the clearer view of this will be seen. Thank you very much, and sorry for this last minute.
No, that's fine. And in the future, I will limit. If I knew there were more speakers, I would have made it a shorter amount of time, but that's fine. Thank you for speaking. Are there any other speakers? All right. So just to refer, please see the item on the front of the agenda, which is under citizens' petitions, and which I actually read verbatim, which says that moderator or members through the moderator shall ask questions only in order to clarify a speaker's presentation, not to interrogate them. And so there are also rules within our rules, which I hope you've all read, which pertain to decorum in speaking to members of the public and to each other as members of this body. And I hope we will all take time to read the rules and learn how to be recognized appropriately and how to recognize me appropriately, and we can move forward together. Thank you. We do have a few communications. Representative Perry and Representative Frickman are not able to be with us tonight and did correspond with us about that. And I did receive a letter from Mr. Davis, who spoke tonight, so I won't reiterate that. Do any other members have communications they wish to discuss at this moment or share? Representative Washington?
I also received a letter from Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Representative Thomas? You don't have to repeat it. I think everyone in District 2 received that letter, but if you have something else.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, thank you. Town Manager Burt?
Just a question. So my understanding is the ordinance would basically be presented as a communication, and then you would
It's a
potentially.
referral.
Right. Okay. So
It's a
I thought you would
referral.
make a referral once it was communicated. So I just wanted to make sure.
Right, right.
For the plastic ordinance?
Yeah, you refer it to committee.
Yes, that will be, I haven't actually gotten it personally, but I am planning to refer it to the Rules Committee. Thank you. And next on our agenda is the report from the town manager.
Good evening. Hope everyone had good holidays and a good new year. For the finance report, everyone should have a copy. If not, it's over on the table. Preliminary budget fund balance, preliminary fund balance as of June 30th, 2019 is approximately $23 million, which is 18% of the FYE 2020 general fund adopted budget. The general contingency budget for FYE 2020 was appropriated at $350,000 with a current balance of $341,355, and the capital reserve fund balance as of December 31st, 2020 is estimated at $1 million. Internally in the departments, we're starting to get really underway on the budget. Tomorrow I'm spending a chunk of the day looking at capital improvement projects. The department internal meetings start in the next couple of weeks, so we'll be pretty busy with the budget coming up. You should have got an email from me just announcing, as you know, Gary Schneider had retired as the Public Works Director, and I was pleased to announce Greg Hanover has taken the position as the Director, and you'll be seeing him shortly. He's in the back. And as mentioned, the short-term rental ordinance will come up at the Committee of the Whole on January 28th. And next week on the 14th, there is going to be an audit presentation, a CAFR presentation, so if you have an interest in that, that's next week. And then other than that, I just wanted to, joining me is Kristen Distante and Larry Dunn to do a presentation. So we have to have them.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Kristen Distante. I live in Mystic, 82 Irving Street. And I'm on the Conservation Commission. We're six of us are members of the Conservation Commission working for the town. We're all volunteering, and it's almost like a full-time job for all of us because we've put in a huge amount of work on this. And so we just wanted to come and kind of share with you what's been going on, because if you've been coming to town council meetings, you've been in the loop, but if you haven't been, you might not be aware of exactly all of what's going on. So, oh boy, I might need help. I don't know how to advance this. If I just touch it, is it going to advance? Yes, okay. So, I gave a couple jokes last time and people heard them a few times, so I thought I'd change it up this time. So this is, I can't believe you had plastic surgery. And also, I don't know if you've heard that Kim Kardashian's been banned from the beach. Too much plastic in the ocean already. Okay, so this is what I'm going to talk about a little bit. First, put this issue that we have in front of us in kind of more of a global setting. Talk about the timeline of the ordinance, kind of the history of the work we've done, and where we are now with it. We're going to talk about this.
There will be no talking.
The survey that we gave, administered, and then the results of the survey. The public education forum, at the request of the town, we had a public education forum, so I'll kind of go over what happened there, and what things are and are not included in the ordinance, as well as then kind of a closing remark. So this is every beach, everywhere. You go anywhere and you're going to find this on the beach. People are careful or not careful, whatever, it's out there in the environment. Right now, the planet is swamped in plastic waste, and across the world, people are starting to do something about it. Locally in Connecticut here, these are some of the communities that have already implemented some sort of ban. You can see some are closer, some are far away. Some are in more restrictive than ours, some are less restrictive. Around the United States, Maine has gone full in. They're banning all polystyrene, all single-use plastics coming up in the near future. I just saw today that Washington, D.C. is banning styrofoam, peanuts, cups, all that kind of stuff. California's way ahead on it. New York has done, they're looking at a statewide ban coming up like in a year or two. They've already done a plastic bag ban. So this is something that's happening. We're not creating this. We're not leading this. We're just kind of in the middle. This is something that's happening around the world.
I'm sorry, can you explain the colors, please, for those of us who can't see that far?
Oh, yeah, sorry. If I could go back. Do you know anyone know how to go back on this thing?
The back arrow.
Backspace?
Back arrow.
The arrow.
That works.
Okay, okay.
There we go.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
blue states are statewide de facto bans of some sort. There's no purple on this map. The purple is showing fees or taxes, and I think the red states have said we're not going to do anything as of now. And the gray states are sort of neutral. These are countries that are banning plastics. The darker green blue are implementing some full-scale bans. We're blaming a lot on China right now. A lot of the plastic in China is our plastic that we sent over there, or our plastic that we manufactured and they're using over there. India's, well, they started to do a ban. They're pulling back because of outcry from business. So the darker blues are doing full bans. The other ones are like partial bans. The yellows are considering bans. In fact, I just learned today that the EU, the entire EU, European Union, is going full on with a big ban in 2021, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So these are the most common plastic objects found on, well, European beaches, but again, you could go to Europe, you could go to South America, you could be here in Groton, you could be anywhere, and you're going to see the same stuff on the beach. Cigarette butts, caps and, soda bottle caps, lids, straws, food clamshells, cutlery, bags. Water bottles are huge. Plastic candy wrappers, Q-tips, and plastic sanitary applicators. Everywhere. This, not unusual. This is literally what some of our oceans look like. You can go to the Galapagos, you're going to see this. So, why does it matter in the world? One of the things, and the gentleman spoke about the Pacific Ocean, what happens is you have giant circulation cells in the oceans, counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere, clockwise in the northern hemisphere. This is because the Earth is spinning, kind of like the way if your toilet water twirls, the oceans are twirling also. So anything that comes off the coast, no matter where it comes off the coast, it gets in that ocean and it twirls and twirls and twirls. So you get in the middle of each ocean, and it's not just the Pacific. We have a North Atlantic garbage patch, we have a South Atlantic garbage patch, we have an Indian Ocean garbage patch. Every one of these oceans has a big patch of garbage in the middle of the ocean circulating. Because it doesn't break down, it doesn't go away. It doesn't dissolve. Oh, there's another picture of it. And this is what it actually looks like in the field. This is actually like out on a boat going through these garbage patches. That's plastic. So there's a global need for plastic regulation. And part of the problem is because plastic is such a miraculous material. We invented it in the 50s. We went completely wild with it. We didn't really understand the long-term implications. We overdid it. We overshot the mark. We need to maybe pull it back a little. So it's and there's also inadequate disposal. Here we try and recycle. We try and landfill it. We try and burn it. A lot of these countries do not have any infrastructure at all for plastic waste. It goes in the ravine. They throw it in the ditch. They have no other option. So it just is out in the environment. And when it breaks down, it doesn't really actually break down. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But there's a lot of toxic chemicals, PCBs, DDT, dioxin type chemicals, styrenes, polystyrene, styrofoam. These are not good, healthy chemicals you want to be ingesting. So some of those garbage islands are as large as the state of Texas. And what they provide a hazard navigation where shipping lanes actually have to be moved around these garbage islands because they can't get through there without fouling their propellers. So it's not good for commerce, it's not good for shipping, it's not good for fishing, tourism, it's certainly not good for marine life. So marine life and human life are all impacted by this global problem. And furthermore, we have this greenhouse effect, the global warming problem. We have the rising sea levels right here. We're affected right here in Groton. Plastics are petroleum products, so they're pumped out of the ground with the oil. They're created from the oil. And so they're causing pollution in their production, they're causing pollution in their transportation. When we try and get rid of them at the end, they're causing pollution also. So they're big contributors to the CO2 problem. Okay, so in that context, the town council asked us, the Conservation Commission, could you look into this for us? Could you do some learning, do some exploring, find out what's what? And so we did. So in 2018, we spent a lot of time researching impacts on the environment. We looked at ecologic, economic, and public health impacts. We really dove into a lot of scientific papers, a lot of research. I think all 6 of us are scientists, so we really dug in there pretty deeply. We also researched ordinances and laws in other towns and states. So, from here to California to New York, who's doing what, what's working, what's not working, what seems easy, what's too difficult at this time. And then we put together a survey at the request of the town, a big survey. And I apologize that some business owners didn't get the survey. As I said, we are 6 volunteers. What we did was we had several very good articles, very thorough articles in the day. It was on the town's website. It was on the town's website for over a month, I think. We had multiple articles reminding people, check this out. And so we tried to do what we could to get input from business because we honestly felt that was really important. When we had all the results in, actually, I said, we don't have enough businesses here, so I personally went door to door to a bunch of businesses, something like 20 additional businesses, just to hear what they had to say because we wanted their input. So, as I said, the press, Chambers of Commerce, online forums were contacted. I think at the Chamber of Commerce, the Groton Patch, tried to get some word out there. So, early 2019, we presented our results to the Town Council. Shortly thereafter, the state of Connecticut actually passed their Senate Bill 1003, the plastic bag ban, and the town started to work on an ordinance based on our input. They requested, could you have an education forum to let the public know? We said, okay, we'll do it. So we had actually in this room, it was on September 26th. Well, I'll get back, I'll come back to that again. But anyway, so we had the public education forum, and we continued to revise, rework this draft just based on input that we got from concerned parties. There was public presentations and hearings at the town council on multiple occasions, and of course all the town council minutes, presentations are all a matter of public record for anyone to look at any time. And then in late 2019, the Committee of the Whole approved the ordinance as we had drafted it. Again, we continue to have press coverage, public notice to try and keep people up to date with what was going on. 2020, just last night, the town council did approve the ordinance by a vote of 8-1. And so, we were very happy about that. Just 2 points of information. We did, the Dunkin' Donuts representatives were here and concerned, and we did listen. The plastic straw ban is actually, it's not a ban. It's like you can, if a customer asks for plastic straw, they can have one, but you're just not going to always be giving it to them. Secondly, last night, it was amended slightly to say that you could keep the lids. There was a lot of concern about the lids on soda, McDonald's cups and whatever. So those were actually stricken from the ban, so the lids are still going to be available. So we have been trying to accommodate. So anyway, this is some of what we got with the survey. We had 483 respondents to the survey. Now, if you look at these national polls that go on CNN, like national poll shows, that's usually based on 1,000 people in the whole country. So we thought 483 people in the town of Groton is a highly statistically representative population. And Larry over there's like a genius engineer statistician. He's like, no, this is statistically valid. We have enough respondents to truly say that this represents the community of Groton and what they want. Out of that response, we had 68 businesses, 415 residents, and which represented business respectively. 14% of the respondents were business and 86% of residents. So this is an example. We set it up in a SurveyMonkey format so people could show either very negative or very positive, so we wouldn't just get a yes or no. We could get a little finer read on people's attitudes. So how much would you support businesses reducing single-use disposable plastics? And you could see the negatives together, very negative, somewhat negative, around 10%, very positive to somewhat positive, up into the 80%, and then about 10% neutral. So we had 80% of the people, and surprisingly, we were really surprised that the results for business and residents were so close together. We expected there to be a lot of disparity. We expected more residents more residents in favor, more businesses against, but we were kind of surprised at the continuity of those two. Here's another example of a question. Businesses will receive goodwill by using single-use plastics. Agree or disagree? 40, so it's like 80% agree. 80% feel that businesses will receive goodwill by reducing single-use plastics. And how committed are you to reducing single-use plastics? So talking the talk or you walking the walk? And we found, surprisingly here, businesses in brown were much more highly committed to actually reducing their plastics than the residents. So again, you have high percentage committed or completely committed to reducing. So I just put this in a pie graph for you because it's a little easier to see the picture. The orange is either very or completely supportive, and the red is sort of moderate. If people might be colorblind, but the smallest piece of the pie up there, the 9.2, that is little or no support for bans. So that was residential support, and business support surprisingly looked almost identical. Again, the little or no support is only about 10%. Okay. One more section we had was we had a comment section on the survey. My mouth gets dry. 79, and I personally read hundreds of comments. I sorted them based on very positive, negative, whatever. It was very positive and very enthusiastic. Like, about time, this has to happen, this is great, fantastic. You know, that was about 79% of the comments. And then there was also 14%, well, back to the positives, or look, we have litter laws, why aren't they being enforced? Like the downtown Mystic's a mess, there's litter all over the place, do something about that. 14% were negative, and among those negative people, it was sort of divided among people who felt that this was government overreach, government has no business. Secondly, that it would be an unfair burden on business owners. Thirdly, other things are more important that the town should be dealing with. Fourth, concern for disabled people who have to use plastic straws. And then 6% expressed, I need more information, I can't be positive or negative on this. And we also had a thing, would you be interested in helping the town? We were kind of surprised. 106 respondents, 106 people, groups said, we would like to help. How can we help? Sign me up. And no, again, if we didn't get to everybody, you know, we tried the outreach as best we could. We really, considering we were 6 volunteers and whatever, we did what we could. So then we said, okay, we'll have a forum. We'll educate the public as requested. So that was held right here in this room. As I said, it was September 26th. It was raining. It was windy. It was pouring rain. We had 140 people come out. And we had 6 main topics for public education. First of all, what's in the state ordinance, what's in the local ordinance. Secondly, what health impacts of plastics, the environmental impacts, economic. What are the alternatives? That was my table. I had a big table set up showing alternatives. And then we had recycling and disposal of plastics. So the different people we had contributing here, we had the Skara, Southeastern Connecticut Regional Source Recovery Agents Authority. We had the Aquarium, the Big Y, Cush, Cleanup Sounds and Harbors. We had Dr. Evan Ward from UConn, gave a keynote speech on microplastics. We had the economics of plastic bags, Mr. Dunn. We had myself doing alternatives, human health impacts, the plastic impact on global warming. We had a TED Talk that we were playing. We had the town government where you could ask questions about the ordinance and speak to the actual person who drafted the ordinance, Bruce Lofgren. And then we had a place where people could vote. The community could register their opinion about what should or should not be banned. So just some of the images from the evening. This is the Mystic Aquarium. Their concern on marine life, because they deal with it firsthand, is ingestion. There's a lot of ingestion of plastics. There's a mother bird. She doesn't mean to, but she's feeding her little chickling, plastic. As we are feeding our children plastic, and we don't mean to either, but it's out there in the environment. Okay, entanglement's another big issue for marine mammals. Then we had human health impact. Each of us consumes between 74,000 and 121,000 plastic particles annually. These are known endocrine disruptors. They're messing with the hormones. There's some carcinogenic possibilities there. We don't really understand the impacts at this point. That's being studied. And we had Skara. They had their, they're the ones that have to figure out what to do with our trash. When we dump it, recycle it, put it in the garbage, where does it go? They're the ones who make it go wherever it is that it goes. So they were there talking about recycling. We wish it was all recycled. That would be great. It's something close to only about 1% actually ends up recycled. Some of it's combusted. We used to ship a lot of it to China. Well, they're not taking it anymore. They don't like it anymore. They don't want it. A lot of it's still getting landfilled. Our landfills are filling rapidly right now. And a lot of it, unfortunately, escapes. We mean well. It blows off the car. It blows out of the truck. It comes out of the garbage can. A bag rips open. It happens. How it happens, it gets out there. It escapes. It's in the environment. Then we had Dr. Evan Ward. He spoke about marine microplastics. And these are these little pieces of plastic. So they just, again, it doesn't dissolve. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, Scripps Institute of Oceanography, just in the last week or so, said that they've underestimated the amount of plastic because they use a net, and they didn't look at the really microscopic ones, and that is something like 8.3 million pieces of plastic in a cubic piece of water. Microscopic, but there's a lot of it. So they had a little microscope set up. Okay, Larry did the economic analysis, which I'm just going to briefly summarize. Free bags are not free. Because while it seems free, the business owner might pay a penny for it or give it to you free. The taxpayers pay to dispose of it. We have to pay to where does it go then? Is it picked up as litter? Is it landfilled? Is it recycled? Whatever happens to it. So if you are using plastic bags for 5 years, you're looking at a cost of $452. That would be I believe per household, right, Larry? Per household, yeah. Biodegradable single-use plastic, which we can't biodegrade here because we don't have the facilities yet. More expensive single-use paper, comparable to the plastic. Now you start to use the reusable plastic bags, your cost goes down because you might use one of those for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. A cotton bag you could use for decades. And that's never going to be contributing any. So while it seems cheap, seems like it's counterintuitive to spend $30 or $40 on a cotton bag, in the long run, that's cheaper for everybody because the cost to taxpayers of disposing of free plastic, it's not free. We pay. We pay to dispose of all that material. So these are some facts. I think Larry had come up with a lot of these. We use 100 billion plastic bags a year, about 1,500 bags per person per year. About 1% of those end up recycled, especially because plastic bags, which is kind of moot now because we've banned them anyway, but they're not easily recycled. 94% of the U.S. water supply contains microplastics. We don't know the health impact. And there's just, a lot of cost involved, a lot of hidden cost involved in the disposable plastics. So this is Groton specifically. Again, this is Larry's work, but I'll go ahead, Larry, unless you want to present it. I'll go ahead. Am I good?
You're doing good so far.
Okay. So he went into Groton's actual plastic trash, and about 79.7 tons of plastic per year. The disposal costs $1.5 million. The straws disposal costs $478,000, and the stirrers, not as much, very small volume. Yes, that's about right.
Clarification.
Yep.
Those are life cycle. There's several layers of costs involved. So when we're talking here, it's life cycle costs. So it's the cost of manufacture, the CO2 emission cost to the environment based upon EPA measurements, the litter costs associated with that piece of plastic product, the recycling costs, because we don't really, these plastics that we're talking about aren't not recycled in the form of, they're going to be made into something else. They can't do it. They burn it, basically, right? And as a matter of fact, it tends to clutter up the machines that do recycling and contaminates that. So even things that could be like cardboard and other things that could be recycled, that batch gets thrown out because of some of the plastics involved in that. But I digress. So there's life cycle costs, which this represents. If you just look uniquely at, do you have coming up the Groton trash costs?
Well, this is in
No, that's the cost, the life cycle cost.
Well, here's what I have. This slide just shows the,
Right, that's what I was getting.
yeah, okay, this is what is included and what's not included.
And
So the
what's
cost
not included.
includes these items: manufacturing fees, litter collection, CO2, marine fishing, impact recycling, energy reclamation costs. Does not include impacts on tourism, health, or ocean cleanup.
Yeah. So there's a lot of costs involved with here versus what we're talking about is, oh, it's a penny a straw, or it's 5 cents for a cup. When you really try and look at it, then I suppose I'll digress for a second, if you let me. I spent my life as a corporate businessman, longer now that I think about it. I came and wanted to be on the Conservation Commission because I wanted to say, wait a minute, all this conservation stuff. I wanted to bring a analytical view to it to make sure we're not getting carried away. So I came with one attitude, and as I started digging into it and try to monetize all the aspects of what's going on, I started to get converted. I'm still trying to get a balance here, but when you really look at the total cost, who pays the life cycle cost? We do as taxpayers. So you got to remember, and just as an entity on our just collection of trash alone, we pay $6.2 million in Groton, right, a year. That's just collection of trash and burning the trash. Forget all these other things that are on there. That's why you got to really step back and look at what we're really talking about. So when I started getting into this and doing the analytics, it was like, oh my God, it's hard to talk about the minutia. You really have to look at the larger picture. So when you look at if you go back a chart, if you go back at the life cycle cost, we, the taxpayer, are paying just for the plastic items identified in the ordinance, 162, a couple $1 million a year, right? We pay for that somewhere along. Usually it comes out in taxes, or it comes out in the cost of products, or whatever. But there's no free lunch. And if you go back to your next chart, that doesn't even include.
Yeah, tourism impacts, health,
right.
ocean cleanup, yeah.
The other.
So this was another analysis that Larry did. Single-use item, the unit cost to the business, the total cost to the resident, and the yearly cost to the resident. So we are subsidizing those cheap, the throwaway things. And it's a choice. It's a choice that we're making. Okay, so and I had a table because I'm a big believer in, yes, businesses should thrive, but there is another way. I mean, there was a time before plastics were invented. We all lived then. There are alternative products. There are alternative ideas. And my thing is like, let's put our heads together. Let's think about what else we can do. Something as simple as, you look around the room now, 10 years ago, no one had these. Now most people are bringing their own water bottle. A lot of people are bringing their own coffee cups. You could bring your own straw. You could have a really nice straw, and you could bring it. Like, really, you could. So I had a whole bunch of, papers and, plates made of sugar cane, and, you can make coffee cups now, and coffee lids. They're making them out of ground up coffee, recycled coffee grounds, compostable paper. Hemp has a lot of possibility, and they're looking at bringing hemp back to Connecticut because it's a really good material. Bamboo. They're making straws out of pasta. There are many, many, many alternatives, and I've said a million times, this is a big opportunity for somebody to start bringing these things in and putting them out there. And I'm just going to say it now before I forget, but one of our goals here is we met with the Economic Development Commission, and we want to have a forum for business owners. We want to have a forum for business owners because there are a lot of business owners here doing this successfully, and they are willing to sit and share their expertise. Let the businesses get together. Look, this is working for me. Try this. This is my supplier. Oh, yeah, I tried that stuff. It's garbage. So we want to facilitate that process. We want to solve the problem. We don't want to shut down the businesses. We want to work with you and find ways to, solve this problem. And we can solve it. Reusable, bring your produce bag to the store. We've all bringing our shopping bags now. It's not that big of a deal. It can be done. Okay, so here's an example of an alternative product. These are compostable. My next hope is to bring industrial composting to the town of Groton, where there's some place where you can actually dispose of materials like this, and they will be composted and can be put back in the soil. And so those products right now aren't very viable because they are more expensive, and we don't have the composting facility. But that's a future goal. And I put this in actually, the day before the first presentation, and you guys were there, and I didn't even know you were coming, but I had heard that day Dunkin' Donuts was converting from polystyrene to paper. I'm like, yes, Dunkin'. Good. That's good. And I think we need to, as consumers, pressure these corporations because these local owners are caught in the squeeze. But if enough people are going to McDonald's, corporate, Dunkin', corporate, and saying, fix it, it'll get fixed. And one more digression. Just today, I came on my feed, there's a McDonald's in Berlin, Germany, and they did an experiment, 10 days, no plastic. They had all alternative products. They had all people trying things out, what works, what doesn't work. So they went completely plastic-free for 10 days. So that's McDonald's. They're doing it in Europe because that's what's happening in Europe. So if they can do it there, they can do it here. Okay. So anyway, the last thing in the thing was attendees at the education forum got to vote on what should or shouldn't be banned. And we were stunned at this result because we thought somebody would object to something, but it was clearly unanimous on single-use plastic bags banned, plastic straws banned, polystyrene cups banned, trays, stirrers, cutlery banned. The only place there was some division was fees on paper bags, which is a big disincentive to wasting the paper bags, but we, at this point, didn't put that in the ordinance because it was still a little dicey. So here's what's included in the ordinance: carry-out bags, stirrers, straws, cups, bowls, lids, polystyrene, which is styrofoam, cups, bowls, lids, plates, trays, and clamshells. Pardon me?
They struck the lids.
The lids, yeah. Oh, yeah, and then last night, in deference to McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts, who complained about the lids, they struck the language of the lids out, and they're not in the ordinance as of now. Okay, so here's what's not included. Laundry, dry cleaning bags, door hanger bags, newspaper bags. You can still go buy baggies or hefty cinch sacks in the grocery store. Those are not being banned. Pharmaceuticals, if you're giving blood and there's a bag where they put your blood in there, that's not going to be banned. Plastics, if you pick up nuts, candy, frozen food, meat, those will still be allowed. Prepared foods or bakery goods. The charity nonprofit distribution, I think that's if people are giving out bags for charity, those are still going to be allowed. Polystyrene and prepackaged food that's filled and sealed. So in other words, if something's manufactured in Ohio and it comes in a plastic bag, a plastic container, that's not going to be banned. And anything with raw meat or seafood that is prepackaged before they sell it to you, they can have that, still have that polystyrene tray. And plastic cutlery, we didn't include it this time because there's not a viable, affordable alternative. So we thought you can't do it because the businesses have nothing else they can use. So why is it important to Groton? Well, first of all, we're a shoreline community. We have a marine ecosystem here. We have fisheries, oyster beds. We don't know the human health impacts. We're all humans, so we should be concerned about that. We are a tourism and boating reliant economy. There's a lot of financial costs. We have litter collection, garbage hauling, waste disposal, as we just went through, is quite costly to the community. There's an aesthetic and quality of life issue. Walking on the beach and seeing plastic is not pleasant. And again, economic opportunity. I think there's a lot of opportunity for somebody, or many people, to invent and create businesses with new products. And I think we have a responsibility going forward for our children and grandchildren to leave this world in good shape. So you say, well, that's Asia. That's not here. That's Asia. What does that matter to us? Well, this is Fishtown Road. We have many, many citizen groups, children, spending their free time picking up plastic garbage. This is Fishtown Road. This is Jim Furlong, short little stretch of road. And he classified and organized just to kind of take a statistical read of what the trash is. And it's largely plastic, and nips are a problem, which is, we're going to look at that at the state level. That's a big problem. Okay. This is the beautification committee, collecting plastic garbage. It's out there. What happened? Next. Okay. So why Groton? Why now? I believe we have overwhelming public support. When you're talking 80–90%, this is what people want. These are the voters and the people of this community. This is what people want that live here. We want to preserve and protect our outstanding quality of life. This place is really, really special. This is a really special place. It's way better than most places. People come from all over the world to come here because this is such a great place. And I think we want to protect the greatness of this plate. The things we're talking about right now are low-hanging fruit. They're relatively easy. There's already alternatives. We've eliminated some of the things that really challenge some of our local business owners, and I think the rest of this stuff is just stuff that we can do, and I think we have a moral obligation to our children and our grandchildren. So this is Europe, the EU, the entire EU, is banning all this stuff effective 2021, and that is the end. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
So, do I take questions? Do I dare?
Yes, are there any questions for Ms. Kristen DeStante or Representative Kachowski?
Yep.
Hello?
Oh, I was looking at him.
Thank you for your presentation. Even though I don't support the plastic ordinance because I believe it's government overreach and is not equitable because the city of Groton and Groton Long Point are not covered in it and because it's a burden on businesses. But I have to say that I have seen your presentation 3 times. And every presentation you've had the same level of energy, and even I have to admire your dedication.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, and I also appreciate that the ordinance was amended to, for the businesses to be able to hand out straws and to eliminate the lids. I have a question about your presentation, but I just have some other questions. I'd like to say there are also states that have prevented cities from recycling plastics, and the survey discussed in your presentation is a reduction, not a ban. And McDonald's in Berlin did run a 10-day pilot, but feedback with guests was they disliked the paper straws and wood taste of the McFurry spoon. And they're questioning the durability of these products and the cost imposed on their franchises. Okay. In your presentation, you stated that a person uses 1,500 bags per year. A person. Is that what it said? There's only 365 days in the year.
But well, a lot of times when people go to the grocery store, you might come out with 5 or 6 or 7.
1,500?
That's not that many. It's only 3 times.
Okay.
It's only 5
Okay.
is actually
Can you please use the microphone? I'm sorry. This is being televised, and the people who are watching can't hear.
Yeah, there's been a number of studies on bags, plus I went out and did my own sanity check. But, so I literally see 30, 40 bags per trip to the grocery store.
30?
Yes, per trip.
Because they double bag sometimes.
They double bag, or they put 2 pieces.
Not in my world. Okay.
Maybe not in your world. I'm talking about on overall averages. So so I did look at all the studies around that have done those analysis. I reduced it because we're a lot saner here in Groton.
Oh,
It still could, yeah, well, that was my assumption. And it still came out to be, I think I came out with the 13 million bags that we as a community used to, not anymore because we got a ban in the state, used to generate. I mean, it was an enormous, about 250,000 wind up, based upon other studies, about 250,000 of those wind up in the ocean, right? Out of the rest of it winds up in trash and refill. So the answer is, yeah, it is unfortunately startling, but we consume an enormous amount of plastic bags.
Thank you.
And I would just also address that I go to the grocery store, and of course I'm the person that puts the lemon in the cart and the orange in the cart and the avocado in the cart, and I use but you have people who have 1 lemon and it's in a little bag, and then they take 2 apples and that's in a little bag, and then they put all those little plastic bags in another plastic bag to carry it out of the store. So, yeah, I think it's happening. And the other thing, you've brought this up 3 times about why is it that it's not, we do not have jurisdiction over the city of Groton or Groton Longport. Those are separate. Our ordinance does not include them. If we pass it, they'll just say, no, that's not us. So we just excluded them for the sake of this is the people who we actually represent.
I understand that point, but my point is it's not equitable. So basically, we're placing a business burden on 5 of the Dunkin' Donuts stores, but not 1 in the same town. So that's just my point.
Thank you. Representative Thomas?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation, first and foremost. It's a lot of energy expended, and I know what it takes to kind of hit the streets and talk to businesses and acquire information like that. So just a quick bit of housekeeping. I'm not sure if I missed something in the presentation. Was there a question to the citizens about how much more people might be willing to pay to
We didn't put that
to
in.
have beverages and meals provided in a sustainable container?
Yeah, I believe we did not put that in the survey. Yeah, that we were just trying to see how do people feel about this, just in general, you know. But I have spoken to a number of businesses that are successfully non-plastic, and they said the cost is higher, but they feel it's worth it, you know.
And was there any sense of feedback from the customers as far as like them feeling like that was an acceptable amount?
No, we didn't. As far as the Conservation Commission on that question, we did not ask that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more, as far as the copy of this presentation, is there a way we can maybe email you and have,
Yeah,
or is
it would
there,
be-
is it available online somewhere?
Sure. Is it on the town website now? Or?
Maybe, I'm not sure. Is it on the town website?
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to share. Yep.
If we could have a link to that on the town website, it could be great, just to have as reference.
Okay.
You can send it to us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We can do that right
Good
here.
idea.
You can send it to me.
Okay. And as far as like the efforts in other states where there are total bans, you mentioned Maine among other ones. Did you come across in any research of what efforts they made in those states to put pressure on corporate sponsors for franchises to provide more affordable alternatives?
No, I couldn't say specifically that we did that. No. Again, this is in process as, you know, we've been kind of moving along with this, and those are, no, we did not look into that.
Are you aware, just anecdotally, about?
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, at my alternatives table, I had a letter printed out that's like, contact Colgate-Palmolive, tell them I love your product, but I don't like your plastic, so please solve it. And
As far as like a large en masse effort, though?
No, we haven't.
Just
No.
individual letters and?
No, but I will tell you that there are lots of people, there are quiet boycotts going on of people who are not patronizing businesses that do have plastic. So, you know, I think that's something that needs to happen, these pressure at the corporate level. My understanding is, though, also we learned, right, that the understanding is that corporations like Walmart, big international, big national corporations, because this state and that state and that state is making a change, it's difficult for them to have different policies for different states. So a lot of them are just kind of voluntarily, like Dunkin' Donuts with the paper cups, voluntarily, like we're gonna make change because it's coming, and we can't have 4 different distributors. We want to make one product nationwide. So that's happening, I believe, with Walmart and other, you know, some big box stores and so on.
I've worked with many global corporations, probably 100, and every one has a green program. And depending on which country you're in, the green program is we will have 0 plastic, right, and 100% recycling. That's Germany. Right, to one that says, hey, here is our program and our plan, and they work it out with both internal programs, their product programs, their communication outreach programs. So I'd say I haven't found one, and that includes anything from, from the Unilevers of the world, to the McDonald's, to, all the major ones. There is not one that I've worked with that doesn't have a green program. Now, like I said, there's all kinds of green programs, but you got to look. But everyone is cognizant of it, and they're all working through trying to figure out what to do. I mean, this is the problem. We don't know the full scope of it. Very recently, you mentioned health. There's no health costs in my analysis because I couldn't figure it out, and there's no studies, other than they did a study for microplastics. 94% of the water supply in the United States have microplastics in it. Okay. We are drinking it today. Breathing it, drinking it was the specific study. So we don't know what the impact is, quite
So
frankly.
in your opinion, based on your research, possibly the best way to apply pressure on corporate sponsors and large corporate entities is to pass ordinances like this and legislation like this, maybe to send the message?
That's part of the, yes, The answer to that is yes, and if you look across the country, there's towns, you look where Barrington, Rhode Island, or Newport, Rhode Island, just a lot of the shore communities have in fact done it, and the corporations see that. California alone is the 6th largest economy in the world. They've banned it. You cannot operate a business in the United States and not look at what California's doing. So the driving force is there, and the tipping point, I think we've already passed. That's my judgment call.
We're not the lead of this.
Yeah, we're at the
Understood.
tail end of this. We're not at the lead of
We're not
this.
the tail end either. We're kind of in the middle of the arrow,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for your efforts, and I
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing what happens.
I want to just remind the group that we have 2 things on our agenda. I'm getting a bunch of people. I wish you'd keep your questions kind of brief so we can kind of move on with our agenda. Representative Merritt?
I just have one question about, in the course of your studies, is the subject of reusable come up?
Yeah, and I didn't mention that enough tonight.
I just found that out today, that there are companies that are gathering these items, and they're remelting them, say, and they're reusing them, and they're putting them out into the industry now.
Yeah. When we grew up, you got Coke in a bottle, and you turned your bottle in, or you got milk in a bottle, you turned your bottle in, and they cleaned it, and that kind of thing is coming back. And there's a lot of that going on. That's a whole other conversation. There's also one of the 3 Starbucks on the West Coast are now, or no, it's in, is it the West? No, it's Europe, where you can buy a cup, and you pay €1 for the cup, and then you can take that cup to any number of businesses, and whenever you're sick of that cup, you just turn it in someplace and get your euro back. But it's a reusable cup that's just used over and over and over. And that's the way. If we start bringing our own things and not, it's the throwaway is the problem,
Well, this is remanufactured products.
Well, that's what recycling is,
And
which hasn't,
this
it's not
company
working.
is local to us, actually, and they've just started to, I don't know if they're mass producing it for the industries or the companies like the coffee shops, et cetera.
Oh, cool. We'd love to know about that.
Representative Gauthier?
So my question's about the timeline for the ordinance. Right now, it's 6 months for businesses to switch over. As someone who's had to source packaging products for a company, sometimes we have to put in pretty large minimum quantities. And I was just wondering if there's any way to reconsider the 6 months with the 3-month grace period to allow businesses more time to use up that already purchased inventory so that before they switch over. It also takes a lot of time to source proper materials, and depending on the food products, particularly in our industry, we're really constrained about the materials that we can use because of the effects of the product on the surfaces that it touches.
I would say that's not my call. I will say that we felt that the 6 months was a kind of fairly generous amount of time with another 3 months for hardship. So, that's the ordinance as it is written now.
And let me just interrupt here because we're not able to change the ordinance. The RTM has only the ability to veto it at this point. The Conservation Commission proposed something, the Town Council amended that and passed something, and at this point, we're just listening to this for information purposes. For information purposes only. So I'm just letting you know we can't.
And we went with pretty much what was standard across all the communities that have enacted this. That was kind of the standard language. We didn't try and push ourselves out there. We just kind of went with what seemed to be normal.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Foster?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. The solid polystyrene came up last night, and I just was curious how this is going to be enforced if solids are now included. I know
Just
the lids were thrown away, but there was no clarity in the language to make sure that this only is intended for foam. So
I think I think the idea, and Larry can correct me, I believe we felt that this would be sort of a self-monitoring thing, but any customer, after the period of time has gone by, any customer could come to the town and say, hey, look, this business is still doing this. So it's not like they're going to be coming in and looking to see what you're doing. More kind of like, this is the way we want to go. We're trusting the businesses to be responsible. But there are going to be some fines and stuff if people are in repeated violation.
I guess my question was just how will people know if it's polystyrene or some other plastic? That's because there's a bunch of different types of
Yeah,
plastics
that's
that
an
might
excellent
not.
question.
So
It's
that,
a very confusing topic.
Thank you. Representative Osman?
Okay, first I'd like to apologize to you if I overstepped my bounds. So I just want to apologize if I did overstep my bounds when I was asking questions earlier. Gentleman in the audience just asked me a question here. For what study was the largest product found, water bottles or commercial shrink wrap? This gentleman here wanted to know that question.
Yeah, well, we didn't see commercial shrink wrap at all in our research. I think the boatyards collect that pretty carefully.
Okay.
Oh, you mean commercial shrink wrap for boats or for like food or
Like pallet wrap is what he's referring to.
which kind?
Pallet wrap, like
Pallet wrap, yeah.
like shrink wrap type of wrap.
That didn't. That's sort of undetermined. There's a lot of undetermined plastic where it's all gushed up and you can't exactly figure out what it is. The things that are easy to identify, like water bottles and nips and cigarette butts, like those things we could quantify, but those some things are just, they've ripped a few times and you can't really recognize what it is. So we didn't have any specific acknowledgement of that.
Okay.
Yeah, and what was the other item?
This kind of circling back to the communication that was transpired as far as when this ordinance first started to our businesses locally here in Groton.
Right.
Again, when I did my research on this, there was a lot of businesses that did not know of this ordinance draft, and they're not here tonight, so I'm only speaking for them when I did speak to them. So I think there was a little bit of a communication gap in this whole thing. So that's why
Acknowledge, yeah. Well, like I said, we tried. It was on the town website. We tried to put it in the press. We tried, we talked to people that we could, and we didn't get. We never intended to be able to reach everybody. We just hoped that maybe some businesses would tell other businesses, and that finally has happened now at the end. So for whatever, we tried.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Representative Lambert, and I think that's our last person. Oh, sorry.
Two.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you for your presentation. It's very informative. I had two questions. One is with the plastic reduction and all the plastic that there is in town, do you know what percentage of plastic this ordinance is targeting? And also, with that percentage, what economic impact is, if the goal is met, what economic impact would that equate to in terms of dollars? What dollar value?
Okay. Well, I can just go to the disposal question where we had a slide, and Larry did the research that we're talking about was $1.5 million in disposal costs to the town. I mean, that the town would save.
Microphone, please, always, if you're responding.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at something that would be very quickly recognizable in our pocketbooks, it would be the trash collection and the dump fees. And so there's about, we're looking at maybe 80 to 90 tons of plastic material. And we pay the tipping fee alone at $64 a ton. I mean, so there are some very quick costs that would come to us. The other costs, that I talked about, it comes in a variety of other ways. So you wouldn't immediately see those cost reductions, but you would see it in trash removal fee reductions.
I guess, and my first question is, do you have an idea of what percentage of plastics, because it doesn't seem like we're targeting, obviously, 100% of plastics, right? We're not reducing
I'm sorry.
100%.
I was
what
talking...
percent of the plastics that there is in the town is being targeted?
Yeah. I was talking specifically about the ones that are being removed. And you're saying what additional plastic is there? Is that...
My question is...
Water bottles, nips.
Yeah, the percentage of all plastics in town, if there has been an analysis for this.
I don't think we've done that, no.
Like, what percentage is being targeted by the ordinance?
No, because you can get into then, kitty toys and, if you start looking at this, there's just plastic everywhere. So we're trying to really focus on just the quick throwaway stuff that's making its way out into the environment. But there's lots and lots. This is like we're scratching the surface here.
And then the economic impact was what you mentioned before.
Yeah. Just this stuff. Just this stuff. Close to $2 million. Yeah.
Thank you. Representative Flax?
Thanks for the presentation. I don't think there's any there are people. If you ask somebody if they want a greener Groton, I think everyone here would say yes. I think in the study that you did, that moving forward, there should be qualifying questions. You know, do I want a greener car? Yes. Am I willing to pay $10,000 more to get that greener car? I may not. You know, so I think there has to be a cost associated with it. But I think with what we saw with businesses tonight coming in and having not known, no one's fault, but maybe we should step back and have another meeting, or you should have another meeting with the businesses to find out what they're...
This is just information. We're not able to do that. We're going to be acting on it next week, and so... Next meeting.
Yep.
This is appropriate for the next meeting. Right now, we're only discussing the presentation we just had.
I did do a couple of Google searches, just unscientific, and it said 300 to 700 bags a day. A family uses 1,500.
Depends on where you are, I
per
guess.
week, so
yeah.
it could be. But
Is it a person? Wait, 300?
It said 300 to 700 per person.
Per person. So
1,500 per family.
that's our number was a family number.
Okay.
So you're
great.
confirming. Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Okay.
Representative Whitney?
But I just wanted to respond that what we saw at the number of public forums is we had hundreds of people in favor of the ban and 2 or 3 businesses against. And we saw that repeatedly. Now, though that 30 or 40 or 20 people, they're not here tonight, but generally, overall, that's what we saw. So that was the real true, what we saw.
I understand that. I'm just saying that, again, I want to get into some of that, but from a question standpoint, in your presentation, you were saying, 75% of people were for a greener Groton and for saving and for reducing plastics. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true. Mm-hmm. But when you don't have a qualifying, what the cost would be to that person,
Mm-hmm.
the question isn't as true as it could be. That's all.
Good point. And then one other thing I wanted to once again say, that we do want to have a forum. We're going to work with the Economic Development Commission and the Conservation Commission together and create a forum for businesses to communicate with each other on this. So.
And that's all I'm suggesting is that we keep it going, keep the conversation going. So that
it's not going to end.
Satisfied. Yeah.
Believe you me, it's not going to end. Okay. So.
Representative Whitney?
Hi. Thank you for your presentation. My question is about Groton Public Schools. They're a very large food provider, and they serve on polystyrene, I hope they're included, but I couldn't really tell from the wording if they are or are not.
They are, because they're in Groton. When we looked at the wording of the ordinance, as far as my knowledge is that because they are here, they are not exempt because they are a school, they're in the town. And of all the places where polystyrene should not be in contact with food, it's in a school. The hot food on the polystyrene. So that was the intent of the wording of the language, is that they are included.
I have one to add something
Okay.
too. Well, I used to use this one.
Mr.
Just to
Burke?
mention, we did reach out to the schools, and the superintendent had Ernie Koshmeyer, is that his last name? Ernie reviewed it and said it's not going to be an issue for them. They're already changing over, in the next couple of months they'll be there. So they were approached.
Thank you. Representative Salva?
Hi, thank you. I just had a quick question about your research as far as outreach to the businesses. Do you have a list of which businesses you corresponded with?
Well, the SurveyMonkey was anonymous, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
But you could list your name.
Yeah, you could if you wanted to. Yeah.
Okay, so no kind of like
We have that-
statistics on what types of businesses
Right.
were contacted?
Yeah. It was a mix, and I can say I personally went to pretty much almost every single business in Mystic, some of which are restaurants, some of which are shops. Just to kind of get an anecdotal, because I wanted to know, like, a survey is just a bunch of numbers, and I wanted to hear from people, and I was kind of really shocked at the level of support and enthusiasm, and mostly people were like, show me what else I can use. But we did reach out to a mix of businesses.
Thank you.
But I think we could retrieve that information, but as I said, the survey was anonymous unless people chose to put their information on.
Representative Jean Shinbrot?
I just wanted to follow up on the school. The Ernie Koshmeyer has bought some very expensive biodegradable trays and utensils. And when they use the polystyrene trays for the kids for lunch, it's 2 times. When they don't have enough kitchen staff to wash trays, which often happens because people call in sick. The second time is when the child is not going to be eating in the cafeteria and goes to a classroom to eat, so they can just be thrown away. The new schools all will no longer have polystyrene, and it is going to affect the budget. There's no doubt it's going to affect the budget. So just to keep that in mind, there is a high cost to those disposables that are biodegradable.
I believe, as I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we did an analysis on the cost, the increased cost, and it came to about $1 per year for every taxpayer. And when you spread that cost out over all the taxpayers, it was really pretty small. So I think it was approximately that, right? The trays for the kids in the school. I mean, don't quote me on that. That's not. But I believe we did look at that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation. And we will take this up, and we will have our committee meeting sometime in the next month. So thank you. I want to thank both of you for coming tonight.
And we're here to work with you. Like, please talk to us. Bring in. We'll work with you. So, thanks.
I wanted to just go and move forward, or rather go and reiterate or restate what I had said before. I had referred it to rules, but I'm going to refer it to Community and Development Services Committee because I was reminded that that's where the blight ordinance had gone, and so I had, for some reason, thought that I had referred that to rules. So that will be going to Community and Development Services for their review. So that committee should have, the committee should expect something. So moving on, I don't believe we have anything from Economic Development or the Superintendent of Schools, do we, Mr. Burt? No. I don't see anyone from schools here. Are there any liaison reports? No. The next item that I have on the agenda is under Public Works for the replacement sidewalk construction reappropriation, and I'm under the impression that our Public Works Committee has met this evening, and so Representative Dean Shinbrot, would you like to give us your minutes on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. In attendance tonight, when we called the meeting to order at 6:35, and in attendance were Gary Wells, Cindy Fortner, Gary Hanover from the Director of Public Works, Mark Berry, Director of Parks and Rec, Clarence Casper, Roscoe Merritt, and myself. And we spoke briefly about the referral, wanting to take $25,000 of an original $55,000 appropriation for a sidewalk study on 184 with the intersection of Pumpkin Hill Road. $25,000 would be moved to resurface, instead of resurfacing, replacing the basketball court at Tanglewood Park and at Deerfield Park. After some discussion and clarification, because to be honest, none of us were on the original committee when the money was appropriated and when it was discussed during the original budget, we did suggest and approve and move to have the $25,000 moved to have the the basketball courts resurfaced. That was our suggestion, is to approve what the town council.
Did you have a vote?
Yes, we voted unanimously.
Voted unanimously, thank you. And just to realize that that was just occurred, so they're not really formal minutes. And if you can write those up and then send them to the town clerk, that would be terrific. So would you like to make a motion?
I didn't know if there were any questions.
Oh, let's have a motion to accept those minutes, though.
Okay.
So I think Representative Baker made a motion, and it was seconded by Representative Rusk. Are there any clarification or questions on those minutes as read by the committee members or anyone else who happened to be there? No? Seeing none, all in favor of approving those minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention from Representative Whitney.
So that's 36.
35 to 0 to 1. Could you please make a motion to transfer the, what?
Should there be questions first?
No, we make the motion first, then we'll have our discussion.
I'm a little rusty.
No, that's fine.
I'd like to make a motion for an acceptance of moving $25,000 from the capital improvement to the, I don't have the paper. To the resurface, CIP replacement sidewalk construction. I'd like to make the motion to move the $25,000 to the replacement of two basketball courts.
Second from Representative Whitehouse. Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions? Representative Whitney?
I just had a quick question, just to be clear. So now both basketball courts are going to be replaced?
Yes, that's correct. Originally, the proposal was to address the cracks in one of the courts, well, actually in both of the courts. One, the cracks in the Tanglewood, the cracks are 3 or 4 inches wide. I mean, the court's just in deplorable shape. Deerfield, there are some cracks that need to be worked on. But when I went to the council, their recommendation was that we actually replace both of the courts. So with this money and the money that had previously been appropriated, we'll be replacing both courts.
Representative Whitehouse?
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the background on this is that you came before us at the budget season earlier this year, and you were looking for, or I believe originally you were looking for the full amount to do this the right way, paving them, replace them as you're going to be now. You reduced your ask because you weren't sure it'd be approved at the higher level, and the RTM's opinion was let's do it the right way, but we weren't able to change anything at the time, and Town Manager Burt said that if we passed it, then we'd be able to find that money at some point in the future, and this is the fulfillment of that promise. Is that correct?
Well, the RTM had asked me to try to find the money. I didn't volunteer. A lot of the members said we'd like to do it, because you have certain rules on the amount of money you can do in CIPs once it goes through the process, so it couldn't be upped to do the full thing. Yep. So I was asked to try to find the money. That's what I'm coming back for. Right. And plus we had the one overage on the where the actual cost came in over also to do with one of them. So.
And I think we also almost accidentally broke the whole RTM system in the process, which fortunately we stepped back from. But this is basically the completion of that process.
Yes, your summary is pretty accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is kind of a tangential question, I guess. It'll tie back in the end, I promise. So what's the time frame for when these basketball courts would be replaced?
The Public Works is going to do the work, and based on their previous commitments, they'll be able to do this work next fall.
Okay. And last year we voted and approved to do several surveys, including a rec survey. When do we anticipate getting those results?
Yeah, so I came to the RTM, I don't know, a couple of months ago, asking for additional funds to do a needs assessment, a feasibility study, and needs assessment, feasibility, and an engineering study, sorry. And I anticipate that we will be kicking off the needs assessment and the engineering study probably within the next couple of months.
So one thing that came up, and so as I understand it, this isn't necessarily moving these funds for this particular project, it's just moving it into that general funds area. Is that correct? Or does it necessarily have to go to the basketball courts projects, these monies?
The money that we're seeking for approval tonight is specific to 2 basketball courts.
Okay. The reason why I asked this is it came up in discussion that perhaps while the state of the basketball court has been in disrepair for quite a while, it may not be what that community wants. It's not my community, I can't speak for it precisely, but I was just wondering how the rec survey and evaluations might feed into this, and wonder if maybe we could leave the funds a little more liquid until we find out what the community actually wants, is all I was going to suggest.
Okay, I can speak specifically to the Deerfield courts.
I know the Deerfield court, I'm sorry, Tanglewood, I'm talking about Tanglewood specifically, is what I've heard in conversation.
Okay. So you're asking us to continue to put on hold the work on the Deerfield court until we find out whether they want a basketball court or if they want something else.
I would
Is
just
that-
recommend, in light that we're already doing a rec study, it seems to be appropriate timing, serendipitous really, that we could have a better understanding of what the community wants in that particular location. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
For Tanglewood, not for Deerfield. That's all. I'm again, this isn't my neighborhood, so I can't speak to it exactly, but I have heard in conversations that this point's been raised. That's all. I'm just bringing it to the surface.
I think by the fall, the needs assessment will be complete, and we'd be able to make that decision. So I'm not. I don't think that we can change the resolution that you're voting on tonight. I mean, I think it would have to go through, and then we could, just because of the timing of everything, we wouldn't be working on that particular basketball court anyway. I'm not sure that the needs assessment is going to be able to identify neighborhood by neighborhood what each neighborhood wants. I'm just looking to kind of maintain what we already have. I'm not asking for anything new. I'm just asking that, look, we've got this dilapidated basketball court that kids use for a number of different things. I think we owe it to the community to, take care of that. But I see your point, and yes, we really wouldn't be waiting because Public Works isn't going to be able to get to it until the fall. But again, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to tell you that the 30 people that in that neighborhood that completed the survey, I don't know if we're going to be able to drill down that specifically to say, well, the 30 people that live in that neighborhood, said yes, they want a basketball court.
Understood. And part of the reason why I'm asking this is to get it into the record and kind of put it out there. So I'm not expecting an answer, but now it's out there, and maybe something will come out of this further discussion. Thank you.
Representative Chase.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So in the original CIP, first of all, what I heard from the town council watching that meeting was that when you put this job out to bid, the bids came in too high. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So for one of them, right, that was correct. For the Deerfield project, we had put in $10,000 in a CIP, and that was based on an estimate that had been provided by a contractor. When we went out to bid, that same contract, and the quote was for, I think, $9,500. So I put $10,000 in to do the work that we had discussed. When we went out to bid, we got one bid back from the same contractor, and that same project was $22,000. So, right, and so I called the contractor. I said, you have to explain how you went from 9.5 to 22. And he said, well, over the course of the winter, one of his biggest competitors had gone out of business. He had picked up a number of projects, and his guys were working 6-7 days a week. His expenses were considerably higher because he was paying overtime for a lot of these projects. So at that point, the director of purchasing and I said, well, let's go out to bid again, and let's try to reach out to, we'll, if you will, expand our search. And we contacted companies that do this in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, and we went out to bid again. Again, we got one single bid from the same contractor, and he had knocked off like $2,000. So at that point, I didn't have enough money to do this project. And so I went to the council, and they had appropriated money to do the other project. And when I went, they said, well, it doesn't, or no, actually it was the RTM, says it just doesn't make sense to spend $18,000 just to patch a basketball court when if you spend another $7,000, we can get a brand new court. So that's when we went that route.
So are you talking about, you talked about Deerfield, so did you incorporate Tanglewood into that conversation? That's the $18,000.
The $18,000 is Tanglewood, yes.
What did that bid come back as?
We didn't go out to bid on that because the council had said, I'm sorry, the RTM had said, instructed the town manager to, well, look, it doesn't make sense for us to go out to do that work. We should just repave the whole thing. So you got to try to find the money. So there was no sense in me going out to bid because I didn't have the money at that point until I went to the council who got the money, and now I'm here asking for the money to be moved.
$5,000 was going to come from registration fees and
No, the $5,000 is tied into the roller skate or the hockey rink project. It has nothing to do with the basketball courts.
All right. All right, so the RTM approved $48,000, with 5 of that from the, excuse me, registration fee.
Right. And
So
there was $16,000 of that money was going toward, or $15,000 of the 48 was going towards the hockey rink.
Right.
Along with the 5,000.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So it was okay when we went through the budget period last year, it was okay to just to do this, and that's what you intended on doing?
I'm not sure that I
The
followed.
the repairs that are in the CIP that were approved.
He had approached earlier budgets to do the full repair and been turned down a couple times, so he wanted to get something done, so he came back with the repair. But then RTM said, it doesn't make sense to repair, let's do the whole thing. We're limited on what we can do right now in the budget because of how the process works. Please try to find the money and come back to us. Don't do the repair. Find the money, come back to us so we can do the full thing.
So if the windfall hadn't come in and the state repairing the sidewalks, would we be continuing with the original CIP?
No, it was good. Well, I was intent to find the money somewhere to come back to see what you wanted to do. And I didn't even have to go this route. I could have just said, let's take it out of the CIP fund balance. It just was a happy coincidence. So, you know, we try to be really aggressive now on sweeping accounts too on CIPs. So I was pretty intent, let's find something where a project's wrapped up and there's money left and we can sweep it out back in to be, used for other CIPs. So one way or another, I was pretty determined to at least give you the option.
So I'm not knowledgeable on basketball courts, so if you filled the cracks, which is what was going to be done, is that not good enough?
The life expectancy of filling the cracks is considerably less than spending the additional $7,000 and probably getting a basketball court that would last you 10 to 15 years.
So you're going to completely rip up the basketball court and replace it?
That's correct.
So is this person who overbid going to do it? Who's going to do it
Public
now?
Works is going to be doing it in the fall of 2020.
Okay, so then there's another question. If we're already paying staff to work, what is that?
It's materials.
And having, also, I believe you have to have a professional paint the lines and do some, there are some professional work involved also with it. So the base layer will be done by Public Works just for cost of materials. And then there'll be some professionals involved too, but it is a cost savings to have the base done by the Public Works.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Baker? Thank you. Representative Miller?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Going back to the original CIP, and thanks, Mr. Berry. Going back to the original CIP, in this original CIP, it mentions that Tanglewood was ADA compliant. Is Deerfield ADA compliant?
Not currently.
Okay, and what does putting Deerfield into ADA compliance mean or entail?
I think that would require making some changes to the existing parking lot and the transfer from the parking lot to the sidewalk in order to, under ADA guidelines, there's certain percentages of pitch, and currently those are not met.
So this current transfer isn't going to help with the compliance?
That is correct.
Okay. And then, so we're essentially just asking for a transfer of funds from one to another. Is $25,000 the max amount you would need? Is there a chance that you could spend less?
Well, no, I mean, I've gotten a quote from Public Works for the cost of materials, so I don't think I can do it any less.
Okay,
and I've also gotten a quote to have the courts painted and have the lines done. You know, I don't think I can do that for any less. I mean, these are things, you know, we'll go out to bid for the painting of the lines, and you know, it may not be 12,000, it may be 11,100. So I could potentially save that, but you know, short of not having lines on the court, you know, I guess we could save money going that route. Just have a, you know, just have a big paved area.
Okay, I apologize for interrupting you. I'm sorry. I thought I heard something last night at the town council meeting about because it was done internally that possibly with this money transfer that there would be potentially a cost saving. So perhaps I misheard.
Well, the cost savings would be, you know, if we went to a contractor, we'd be paying for materials plus the labor. So it would be.
Okay, so that's where I misunderstood. Thank you for clearing that up. And I have no further questions. Thank you.
Representative Katowski? Representative Katowski?
Thank you. I have a question. CIP projects must be completed within 5 years, and if they're not, then the money goes back to the general fund?
That's at the outside amount. They're automatically swept out, closed out at the 5-year mark. As, for instance, the asbestos project for the high school, we had to reallocate that because the 5-year mark was hit. However, Cindy and I work to review these several times a year to, if we know the money's done being spent or a portion on a certain part, we're sweeping them out earlier. So 5 years is the max.
Considering that we are having a rec study, and considering that this wouldn't be done till the fall anyway, I think Representative Stevenson has the right idea, that we should just wait on this.
Again, we won't have likely that level of detail that would really shed any light on it. And on top of that, if it's turned down tonight, you'd have to restart the process later. And so by the time that study's out, you might be running into timing issues on actually doing the work in the fall.
I have one more question, and I probably should know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Considering that we have a paving company within our Public Works Department, why did we have to go out to bid on this project in the first place?
We were specialized patching the project both at Tanglewood and Deerfield, and when the council made the decision to replace the existing courts, we didn't go out to bid. I talked to the director of Public Works, and he said yes, they could do it, and told me when they would be able to do it.
I think it's my understanding too that if you do the crack patching, you're not just slathering in the fill. There's a certain process to make sure it's stable and level, and you have to have an expert do it. You can't just use town staff.
Thank you. Representative Jones?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So my question is, we're replacing the courts. Are we also doing anything with the poles, the backboard, and the nets, or is it just the courts?
No, we're trying to avoid replacing the poles and the backboards. We will be saw cutting around those and paving around those.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Rusk?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. To address Representative Stevenson's and Katowski's concerns, is it not true that if people in the neighborhood of Tanglewood came to express a lot of concern regarding this resolution could be amended? Correct? Later?
Say that again.
So if people from the Tanglewood neighborhood came out and said, we don't want our basketball court, we would prefer that money be used for something else. They came and addressed the city council. this resolution could be amended to change that.
You wouldn't amend this because it'd already been approved. What you do is, let's say the work hadn't started and they came forward, they could ask us to relook at, hey, put a pause on this, let's relook at it and introduce a new resolution.
Okay.
Right.
But I do believe we received correspondence during the budget season from several constituents who were super eager to have this done, and with photos. I don't remember. Any other questions for the manager or Mr. Barry? No, seeing none. I just want to reiterate the motion, which is to reappropriate $25,000 from FYE 2020 CIP 3B replacement sidewalk construction to FYE 2020 CIP 4E park improvement / ADA compliance, and reduce the CIP 3B from $182,000 to $157,000, and increase CIP 4E from $48,000 to $73,000. So that was the gist of it. And that's the motion we have on the floor, and it's been seconded. And we knew, yeah, I was going to do that. And we're also curious if Representative Driscoll is here, because we don't see her. She's left, I believe,
But is she here now? Are you here now?
we're just trying for the,
Okay.
all right. So seeing none, and seeing no more questions, and affirming that our member has left.
Right, so
Representative Bailey?
Yes, Madam Moderator, I might be beating you to the finish
Don't
line
call
on
the
this,
question, please.
but I was just requesting a roll call vote. I'm sure
Roll
you're
call,
probably
okay,
going to
sure.
do that, but I
Roll call
wasn't
vote.
sure.
That's
My
fine.
ESP's not working good.
Perfect. All right. There's been a request for a roll call vote, so
On we go. Are we ready?
you're ready.
Okay. I'll call your name, you say yes or no or abstention, please. Representative Adams.
Yes.
Bailey. Yes or no, or abstention?
Yes, we'll be approving it, right?
Correct.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes is
All
to
right,
approve
okay.
the reappropriation. No would
Okay.
be to not approve
No.
it.
I'm
You
sorry,
said no?
You said no?
No.
Okay. Baker? Casper?
Yes.
Cassieri? Chase?
No.
Cologne?
Yes.
Crockett Hubbard?
Yes.
Dean Shinbrot?
Yes.
DeSiller Fleming?
Yes.
Eben?
Yes.
Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Flax?
Yes.
Portner?
Yes.
Foster?
No.
Frickman? Oh, sorry. Gothier? I'm sorry, Lauren Gothier? Yes. Gustafson? Oops, not here. Hanscom?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Katowski?
No.
Lambert?
Yes.
Luck? Miller Miller?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.
Osman?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rusk?
Yes.
Selva?
Yes.
Starkley?
Yes.
Stevenson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Whitehouse?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
31 in favor, 4 opposed. No abstention.
31 in favor, 4 opposed, no abstentions. That motion passes. Thank you very much, Representative Dean Shinbrot, for convening that meeting under such short notice. I really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So, thank you. The next item on our agenda is to have the, to discuss the rules of the 32nd RTM. Representative Richards, would you like to? Temporary chair. Richards, would you like to read the minutes of the Temporary Rules Committee?
Or have someone else read.
Yeah, if you don't want to, I can, or you can delegate.
I have a cold. My voice is going. I will do my best. If I need to pass it on, I'll let you know. All right. Before I start, just want to let you know that a draft of the minutes went out with the agenda initially, and what I have, and I'll be reading, is different than that because we ended up meeting a second time, and there were some assumptions in the first one that we were resolving things via email, which we didn't, although the gist of it is basically the same. Okay, and there are copies over here if you want to read through yourselves. Okay. 121919, Temporary Rules and Procedures Committee met. Members are Representatives Kathy Chase, Bruce Flax, Wilmer Lambert, Nancy Mello Miller, and Kate Richards. All were present. Also in attendance was Sima Eben. The meeting was called to order at 4:04 p.m. The goal of the meeting was to review the RTM rules and procedures from the previous term to consider possible changes for improvement. Rep. Richards reviewed the changes that were made at the start of the previous RTM term and the process of proposing changes to the full RTM this term. Rep. Richards explained the parts she noted for discussion. First, she noticed Rule 3.6 states, as provided in the first clause of this rule, in reference to the clerk calling the RTM to order in the absence of the moderator. This may have been the case in an earlier version of the rules, but that part is now in Rule 3.5 instead of 3.1. The committee agreed to propose as provided in Rule 3.5 instead to make an accurate reference there. Second, in Rule 6.4.1.2, regarding the presentation of committee reports, Representative Richards suggested striking the first part of the last sentence, quote, at the request of the committee chair, end quote, so that committee meeting minutes are always shared with the full RTM by the clerk in advance of an RTM meeting. The justification was to provide all RTM members details of the committee meeting prior to voting on the issues discussed on those issues in the committee meetings. Moderator Eben said that this may be difficult for the clerk due to the timing of committee meetings and when the committee chairs submit their reports to the clerk. All members discussed possible benefits such as RTM members being able to read a copy of their own rather than only listening to committee minutes read aloud, and their ability to be better informed prior to the full RTM meeting. Concerns about the timing of emailing reports and minutes to all RTM members were shared by all, so an additional change was proposed to add that the report minutes would be shared with the agenda, quote, or as soon as possible, end quote, with the understanding that sometimes this would not happen before the full RTM meeting, but wanting to have them shared when it is practical to do so. All members agreed this change would be helpful and proposed it to the full RTM. Third, Representative Richards asked the committee to look at the last sentence of Rule 6.4.1.3. Quote, the clerk of the RTM may notify the press of such a meeting so that interested members of the RTM or the public may attend, end quote. The concern was about why it was necessary to notify the press of an RTM committee meeting in order for the full RTM to know that there would be a committee meeting. Committee members asked about how they might know of RTM committee meetings when they were not on those committees. Representative Lambert stated it was important to know about those meetings so that an RTM member can choose if they want to attend. The committee discussed if agendas are already shared with the full RTM and felt that there was some inconsistency. Representative Flax asked if RTM committee meetings were posted on the town calendar, which would allow a place to check. After checking, it appears they are, though Rep. Chase noted she didn't see them on the meeting list she usually checks. Representative Richards suggested the agendas be emailed to the RTM committee members and the full RTM at the same time, so all have notice. Fourth, Representative Richards pointed out that the word "of" should be inserted in Rule 9.6 to change it from via the town clerk, the RTM, to via the town clerk of the RTM. All members agreed. Moderator Eben asked if a rule stating exactly when a motion not on the agenda may be made and when RTM members can comment or have a less formal discussion without making a motion would be helpful. The committee agreed that the other business section of the agenda was the correct time for these and did not think further wording in the rules was necessary. The committee did suggest the moderator and floor leaders explain this to all RTM members and that the moderator be assured that all RTM members have an opportunity to speak during the time for other business before moving to adjourn. Moderator Eben proposed a possibility to bypass the need for suspending the rules when an agenda item has not been reviewed by an RTM committee. This would change Rule 6.5.1 to allow for the moderator to put an item on the agenda without committee review, without a suspension of the rules in the case of business that needs a quick response. The committee brought up several points and ultimately decided that the current rule was the best because now RTM members can, by a 2/3 vote, decide if it is all right that an item did not go through the regular procedure of committee review. And the proposal would potentially take away the ability of the RTM to make that decision as a body. It was stated that suspending the rules should not be a regular way of conducting business, as going to committee allows for important discussion and research into an issue, but the timing of some items does require action before a committee could meet, and this procedure works. The committee then addressed suggestions emailed by Representative Whitehouse and Representative Katowski. The open discussion rule proposed by Representative Whitehouse was very similar to the proposal by Moderator Eben discussed already, and the consensus was the same. The committee members pointed to the other business section of the agenda as the correct time to have discussions like those described, and so another rule is not needed. Regarding Representative Whitehouse's proposal titled Fair Debate Closure, which adds an option to close debate by majority vote after representatives slated by the moderator speak have all spoken, the committee noted its similarity to Representative Katowski's proposal. Both were discussed and debated. Representative Richards noted that the 2/3 support for moving the question was already a high threshold, and the recent instances of moving the question all happened well after the 10 minutes the moderator can deny that motion. Committee members were concerned about not giving all members time to talk and ask questions in order to be well informed before voting. They also showed concern about repetitive comments and comments that were not relative to discussion. Representative Richards said that a new rule that depends on who the moderator has written down on a list might be problematic because it depends on who the moderator had seen at a given time, and others may raise their hand if they knew debate was about to end, but not be able to at that point. Also, those members speaking after debate has been closed may speak for a long time, which defeats the point of moving the question. She proposed an alternative that, at the moderator's discretion, allows debate to continue for a maximum of 10 minutes after the question has been moved. Representative Flack suggested that each member be kept to only 1 minute of speaking after the question has been moved in order to prevent only 1 or 2 members taking up the whole 10 minutes. The committee agreed unanimously that this was a good way to allow for members to quickly ask a question or comment after the question had been moved, and still finish the debate period within a short amount of time. The third proposal by Representative Whitehouse, titled Motion Proposal Procedure, was to codify how to propose a motion outside of a meeting. After discussion and review of the current rules and procedures, the committee decided that the existing Rule 6.5 addresses this concern by explaining that, quote, matters may be referred to standing committees at any time by the moderator, end quote, and confirmed that Moderator Eben, that an RTM member may bring an issue to her outside the meeting, and she can send it to committee before the next RTM meeting as possible and when in order. The committee discussed the best way to ensure that RTM members understand this option and recommend the floor leaders and moderators state this to the RTM members. The final proposal by Representative Whitehouse requested a rule limiting the cancellation of RTM meetings. The rationale given was, quote, the charter says that the moderator may cancel any meeting at which there is not business, but business is more than we vote on. What we ask and discuss is often just as important to our constituents, end quote. In our discussion, the committee noted that there are costs associated with having a meeting, whether there is business to act upon or not, and we're interested in the exact costs. Moderator Eben stated that RTM members often have many commitments and explained how a decision is made about a possible meeting cancellation. She reviews the agenda, and if there is no business listed and no special presentations scheduled, and no other business known to be introduced, she contacts the town manager, town clerk, and floor leaders to ask if there is a reason to meet. If not, she may cancel the meeting. The committee talked about the RTM meetings as a time when town residents may learn from the reports given by town staff and speak at the time for citizens' petitions, and noted that there are other ways to learn about current issues and comment, such as the town council meetings. Representative Flack shared a concern about canceling RTM meetings too often, such as 2 or more consecutive meetings. Representative Richards commented that it did not seem right to have a meeting to say there was a meeting when there was no business to act on. The committee, with the exception of Representative Flax, agreed that the current procedure ensures a meeting will be held when there is business for the RTM and did not want to restrict cancellations, but instead leave that decision to be made based on the need at the time. The committee did not recommend the rule change proposed. committee member, Representative Flack, shared a list of 4 recommendations from Representatives Lauren Gauthier and Chase Foster. The first was for the Planning and Zoning Commission to have a liaison from the RTM, perhaps 2, with 1 from each party. The committee discussed that liaisons from the RTM to commissions are always welcome to be discussed with the moderator, and this does not require a rule change. Their second recommendation was to allow all members to call out a point of order, not only the moderator. This is already in place per Robert's Rules of Order, so no action is needed. The third recommendation stated, rules committees should be chosen by someone other than or in addition to moderator and with more minority representation. The committee noted that this procedure under Rule 6.2 already lists that all standing committees be chosen by the moderator in consultation with the floor leaders and requires minority representation so that no more than 2/3 of the members may be from one party. This was agreed to be sufficient by the committee. The final recommendation requested a rule to meet if 1/3 of the RTM wanted to meet because they believed there to be legitimate business. The committee noted that this situation was previously discussed, and the current procedure is to not cancel a meeting if only one member has brought legitimate business to the RTM, so a much lower threshold already exists. The committee also discussed virtual meeting attendance. One RTM member participated in the December 2019 meeting via phone, and committee members had concerns about how to know for certain the person on the phone and potentially voting was indeed the elected RTM member, and how multiple virtual connections might be handled. There were also concerns about the person participating remotely accurately hearing all debate, and a possible need to have a procedure for how they would signal a desire to speak. Representative Richards shared that she asked the town clerk about this right after the December meeting, and moderator Eben had also previously discussed this with the town clerk. The town clerk stated that participating remotely is detailed in the state's Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, and that her office prearranges and verifies the identity of members calling in. She said that since it is already coded in state law, there is no need to put it in the RTM rules. The committee wanted to learn more about what rules already exist about this and considered a rule for guiding this type of interaction. There was a motion to adjourn by Representative Mello Miller, second by Representative Chase, and meeting was adjourned at 5:37. So that was our first meeting.
Thank you. So we have red, what?
I just need a drink of water.
Oh, you're not, sorry. There's more minutes. We're not at the end yet.
Okay. So we met again on Monday, January 6, 2020. All members were present. Same members. Also in attendance, Town Clerk Betsy Mukausher, Representative Chase Foster, Moderator Simit Eben, Representative Mike Whitney. This meeting was called to order at 6:03 p.m. The committee met to conclude several items from the previous meeting now that more information was available from the town clerk. After the last meeting, Representative Richards spoke with the town clerk about the findings of the committee and how the temporary rules and procedures will conclude. The town clerk provided information on the current FOIA statutes that relate to virtual meeting attendance, allowing for meeting attendance, quote, by means of electronic equipment, unquote, and shared a 2017 report by the Connecticut Office of Legislative Research, finding that telephone meetings and voting appear admissible under FOIA. The town clerk will also determine and share with the RTM at a later date what costs are associated with an RTM meeting to better understand that as a factor in determining meeting cancellations in the future. The first item for discussion was the proposal to alter Rule 6.4.1.3 Notice of Committee Meetings. After consultation with the town clerk, the committee agreed to strike the last sentence of this rule so that a request by the committee chair is not required, because the town clerk stated that the way of notifying the public listed here is out of date. In addition, the committee agrees to alter the second sentence of this rule by replacing, quote, and such other members as shall have expressed in writing a desire to be notified of a specific committee meeting, end quote, with a new wording, quote, and all RTM members, end quote, so that all RTM members will receive communications of all committee meetings by default. To address a concern made by Representative Lambert that somewhere in the rules it should be clear that the public be notified of all RTM meetings, meetings of all members and of committees, it was also unanimously agreed to add wording to Rule 4.1. The committee recommends the first sentence of this rule to end with, quote, and the public will be notified per the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, end quote. The second item under discussion was the specific wording of the proposed rule change to 7.3 to allow some debate after moving the question. This is recommended to the RTM as a rule change by adding to Rule 7.3 the additional sentence, quote, "If the RTM votes to move the question, the moderator may, at their discretion, allow for a maximum of 10 additional minutes of debate, with each RTM member allowed a maximum of 1 minute," end quote. All committee members agreed to recommend this to the RTM. The subject of virtual meeting attendance was the third item of discussion. Committee members said again that they had concerns about how virtual attendance is handled to ensure that virtual attendees truly hear all discussion of the RTM, that they can participate in that discussion, and that their identity is confirmed. Some research is needed to understand what technologies best allow for virtual attendance to be effective and secure. It would also be helpful to find out how other local governments handle these concerns. At this time, the committee does not recommend any action, but does agree virtual attendance should be monitored and sent as an item to the Permanent Rules and Procedures Committee by the moderator if it appears this option is being abused or problematic in the future. The committee also recommends the town clerk to begin research into possible solutions. Representative Lambert brought up a question about when and if a discussion may be made about a possible veto without making a motion to veto. The committee talked about the difference between a veto brought up during a committee report and one that may be brought up under the agenda heading Other Business. It was agreed that if under Other Business, then a discussion may occur without suspending the rules to make a motion to veto if desired, because open discussion is an option at this time. There's a motion to adjourn by Representative Miller, Representative Chase seconded, adjourned at 7:02 p.m. So I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Second with that. Representative Adams seconded. So we have a motion to accept the minutes of the Temporary Rules Committee. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving those minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That those minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you. Is it the desire of the body to have a motion on the floor to accept these? Do you feel comfortable with that? Okay. To accept the changes? Sorry.
I'll make a motion to accept these rules and procedures that are being proposed.
Second.
Second with Representative Bailey. So we have a motion to accept the changes that have been proposed by the Temporary Rules Committee of the 32nd RTM, as outlined in the draft rules of the 32nd RTM that you've received. Representative Casper.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have one question about a typo in the contents. Section 6 is missing.
What?
I think it's been renumbered, isn't it? Renumbered? Yep. Isn't it renumbered? All right, you stinker. That's modern technology for you. Right, right, right.
What happened?
It must have been inverted when she was. Yours is right? No, section 6. Right, section 6. Look at the new one, you just bring it out. Which one are you looking at? Oh, the content.
Oh, okay.
I thought you were looking at.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Yeah, okay, so, can the contents be amended?
Yeah, if I could find my rules.
All right, any other discussion? It's just like the table of contents on the front. Representative Bailey?
It looks like
6, 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah.
I actually have a printout at home, and it's just 2 columns, and it's printed out weird.
Yeah, printed out weird, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's really.
Oh, it's actually on the back page. If you turn the page over, you'll find it. So it's not, it lost its column. And 6 is missing, as Representative Casper said. He's correct. Right. Thank you.
6 is in the text.
It's just the
Right,
table of
it's-
contents is messed up.
Right, yeah, right,
But
about
6
the-
is in the text, in the
Oh, I
body.
got it, yep.
Everything's there.
Representative Bailey?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. The date on the front page, it's for tomorrow. Shouldn't it be today?
It will be
Today.
changed to whatever day we approve it on.
Right, that's just
Okay.
illustrated, it has to be.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. All right.
Was there another hand up? Representative Whitehouse?
So a couple questions. First, regarding the discussion of ordinances to be potentially vetoed. What we've done in the previous session was that we would discuss them during the committee report. So do I understand the minutes say that we should not discuss them at that time and we should wait until other business?
It was only about suspending the rules.
Right. No, but in terms of there were places in the minutes where it discussed being able to have a discussion of an ordinance, so we don't have to have the awkward sounding, I'd like to make a motion to veto this ordinance for discussion purposes only. And it sounds like the reason why you didn't put in a rules change was that we could discuss it during other business. So going forward, should we discuss ordinances during other business? Because otherwise, it sounds like we missed the point of that proposed rules change.
No, the rule change is recognizing that you can bring up a veto during a committee report after a committee, if a committee has met on it. If they haven't met on it, it won't come up at that point, so the time to bring it up would be during other business. And if that's the case, you could have a discussion without making the motion, because
But-
it's under other business.
But if the committee has met on it and discussed it, and we want to discuss it but don't necessarily want to veto it, can we have a discussion without proposing a motion?
No.
And how would we do that? Okay, so going forward, we're still going to have to make these awkward, for discussion purposes only, I move to veto this.
That's our procedure.
Okay, because that's a bad rule and should be fixed. Because it makes us sound silly to people watching outside who don't know our rules. Because to say, I've moved to veto this motion, but I don't really want to veto the motion, but I'm going to make a motion to veto the motion, sounds silly to, and it's going to happen next month, whether we want to veto the plastics ordinance or not. Someone's going to make a motion to veto the motion for the purpose of discussion, and
I'm sorry. I think that people miss the proposal. I mean, when you get an ordinance, it has been passed by the council.
Right.
You don't have to move on it. You don't have to motion on it.
Right.
So, and it passes. The 45 days expire and it becomes law. If you want to discuss it, then you have to put a motion on the floor. I think that's very clear.
well, no, I understand that's what the rules are.
But you don't have to ever put a motion to
But-
veto. You
but if
could
we
just
wa-
let it pass just the way it is.
Right, but if we want to discuss it, we have to put a motion out, and that's what we've done. I believe we've had a motion to veto every ordinance in the last 2 years.
Right, but it's,
and-
you understand that the item has been passed already. It comes
Right.
to you already approved. So there's only one motion that you have, is to veto in order to discuss it. You can't say, oh, we want to discuss it. There's no motion.
Right, but in the minutes, it said, this is fine because we can talk about it during other business. But if that's the rule is, that's what it is for now. We can discuss it later. In talking about the cancellation of meetings, so last year we canceled the July, August, and October meetings, which was 3 out of 4 meetings. And I know there were some members who wanted to bring up some issues and weren't able to. And in the minutes, it says that if one member brings up legitimate business, then that will prevent the meeting from being canceled. What constitutes legitimate business?
This is how I have moved forward with this. I get an agenda. If it has nothing on it, I ask Betsy and Mr. Burt if there's anything on it, and I've reached out to the floor leaders as well.
Okay, so if a member does have pressing questions, pressing information they want to address, they want to bring up, should they address that to their floor leaders, to you, to?
You would go to your floor leader if you have something that you think is urgent enough to convene a 41-member body, yes.
Okay, so that,
And I ultimately determine that.
okay. So, because it sounds like the proposed rule is that a third of the body could require a meeting. But as is now, a member may request it, and then it's your discretion as to.
Yeah, I mean, I have always, had a meeting when there's been something to discuss. We had a meeting where we just discussed the budget and there was no action items. We had a meeting where we had a presentation from Skara and there were no discussion, there was no action items. So, I don't feel that we should meet personally when there's nothing to discuss. We have no scheduled presentations and we have nothing to act on.
Yeah, I'm just asking so that the whole body can know if they do have
that's-
something they want to.
That's my
bring up that
rubric.
They should.
I think that there are times when we don't have action items. Those are the times when it would be nice to get updates on the schools. Those would be times when it's nice to have longer updates on economic development. I think it's hard to compress, a full agenda with, kind of nice informational sessions, but, so that's my.
So a member who has an issue they'd like to have more discussion of should bring it to your attention.
So here's,
beforehand.
I'm going to read the town charter. I've been directed to do so.
Yeah, I'm familiar with
Regular
it.
RTM meetings shall be held at least once a month on a regular meeting day decided upon by RTM members, except that whenever there shall be no business to be acted upon at a regular meeting, the meeting may be canceled by the moderator and upon notice to the members. Special meetings may be held on the call of the moderator and must be held after submission to the town clerk of a petition signed by 10% of the qualified electors of the town. Not the RTM, but the town. So this is the charter. These rules can't change the charter.
Right, but these rules can affect the implementation of the charter and.
No,
and
the
limit
charter lays it out pretty clearly.
Right.
I think I just
The charter
read the
says
charter.
the moderator may cancel meetings. The rules could restrict the moderator's ability to cancel meetings.
I don't think so.
Well, and the rules can define what business is. The charter simply says business and doesn't define what it is, so the rules could define what business is.
We know, well, what.
But I'm just asking, so it's clear what the process is. If there's a member who wishes there to be a meeting and has business, they should address it to their floor leader and they'll address it to you, correct?
So the RTM has specific responsibilities that's clearly laid out in the town charter. So if you want to propose an ordinance to pick up dog feces, that would be a real piece of business for the town. You see, just because you want to meet is not business.
Well, it's not meeting for fun, but I'm meeting because we want answers to information about lead in the water in the schools that we're expecting, or we want information about.
I probably wouldn't convene a meeting to ask a single question. I think it's when there's an issue and there's substantive information that can be conveyed. Those are things that are important to me. I don't think it's, that we would convene a meeting to answer one question.
Okay. I just want myself and everyone else to understand what the process is, because I was
Yeah.
surprised when we canceled as many meetings as we did, so just want to know what
I
to
think
expect.
you missed a few in there, so it may have seemed longer.
No, I missed one.
Well, we had one in we had one in September, and you missed August, or we had one in September that you weren't there.
Right, so we
Okay.
canceled 3 out of 4, and I wasn't able to attend one. But we canceled 3 out of 4 meetings. That's an objective fact, wherever I was. And in terms of motion, method for submitting motions, what is the method for doing so? Because I submitted a motion by email CC the entire RTM, and it never was referred to committee.
Point of order. Relevancy. This is, right now, we're just discussing approving the rules.
We're discussing the rules, and part of the rules is how motions are submitted by members, and I'm giving an example of what I'm referring to.
Yeah, you submitted proposals to the Rules Committee, and they went to the Rules Committee. They discussed it, she just read it in her minutes.
No. In October, I believe it was, I proposed a motion, and no action was taken, so.
Point of order, relevancy. We're discussing approving these rules, not whether certain.
Right, I'm asking what the
I don't remember what
procedure-
you're.
Yeah,
so
it
I
doesn't
don't-
matter. It is an example. If you don't remember, it's okay. It's possible you didn't get the email. That might be what happened. So what is the process if somebody would like to submit a motion for, say, a rules change?
Well, we have had it, and they were submitted in writing and presented to the town clerk, and then she gives it to me, and then it's referred.
Same
Okay.
thing, you
Or
go to
they,
the
we
floor.
usually sit right next to each other, so it's usually presented to both of us.
Okay, so it has to be delivered by hand in writing?
That would-
It has
Is
to be, it
proper?
has to, any motion has to be reduced to writing, yes.
Okay, so it can't be emailed, it has to be
That's still writing,
hand-delivered?
that's writing. No,
Okay.
no, email works.
So email is acceptable and...
Right, it's
Okay.
just, you can't verbally call
Of
up and
course.
say, I'm making this motion, right?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to understand
Or stand there and
if
make
email
it.
was a valid way to submit a motion. Okay. Very good, that's all my questions, thank you.
Representative Lambert, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. So with regards to an ordinance that's passed by the town council, then coming to the RTM after it's gone to committee. So now with the town clerk sending the committee meeting notice to all RTM members, there is a time where the RTM member can discuss what is being passed at that committee meeting. And also during the time where it is presented to the RTM body with the meeting minutes, it could also be discussed with regards to the meeting minutes, the ordinance that will be voted on. So there are two times. The time that is being mentioned specifically in the meeting minutes with regard to being in other business, because it is in other business, that allows us the option to set up a discussion in that section. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Representative Osman, did you have your hand up?
Can I make the motion for a 5-minute recess for people who use the bathroom and whatnot?
Sure, 5 minutes?
5 minutes, yeah.
Sure, please return by 10:20. I wanted to call your attention to Rule 8.6, which is when a member is about to speak, it's how to be recognized. I realize there are a lot of new members here. So when a member is about to speak in debate or deliver any matter to the RTM, he or she shall rise and address the chair as Mr., Madam, or Madam Moderator. And if two or more rise at the same time, the moderator shall name the member entitled to the floor. If any member What?
I think that's it.
Okay. So if you want, you will address me as Madam Moderator, and you will acknowledge that I have recognized you. We don't just speak. That's, you would say, thank you, Madam Moderator.
Stand up.
You don't have to stand up to do it. You can raise your hand. I'm pretty good at seeing it, but occasionally I have to admit I have maybe missed a person, and I apologize for that. My goal is not to miss your hands or your cloaked desire to speak. But we do have rules about decorum in this, and I just want to point out that, I would like to be referred to as Madam Moderator, and that's how you will recognize me. And I will recognize you, and then we'll move forward from there. So I did see Representative Whitney's hand up before we broke.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I want to discuss the changes to Rule 7.3, moving the question. I understand, and what the changes are, if the RTM votes to move the question, the moderator may, at their discretion, allow for a maximum of 10 additional minutes of debate, with each RTM member allowed a maximum of 1 minute. I have no problems with the intent of it, and I understand because it's a very harsh break to discussion, and actually I never vote to move a question for that reason. I think that the strength of the RTM is that we have many members that should be heard, and we can talk at length about any subject, including this one. However, my issue with it is that statement, the phrase "moving the question," that's entrenched in Robert's Rules of Order as an immediate end to debate. It's when someone says that, it's non-debatable, we vote on it, it's 2/3 votes. That's all consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. I understand that we can adopt our own rules. However, I think that causes confusion because it is, if we adopt this change, it would be no longer an immediate end to debate. It'd be a sort of a soft end to it, which is different from the intent of Robert's rules. And actually, beyond that, it might have the unintended consequence of making it more easier to get more people to vote for moving the question because it's not this hard cutoff. So rather than totally ending debate, it's just giving us a set time limit, which may be attractive. So with that, I'd like to move that we amend these amended minutes to strike that change in Rule 7.3.
We have a motion to strike the new language from Rule 7.3 made by Representative Whitney, and it's been seconded by Representative Stevenson. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Representative Casper?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would not be in favor of striking this, and one of the reasons is what's happened in previous debates, where there's people on a list as they raise their hand to speak, and one person gets up and speaks, and then says, "I move the question," which by itself is inherently unfair. And I think leaving it up to the discretion of the moderator, because she knows who else is in the queue, and even how that person is called is kind of random. It may not have been exactly that person who got to speak, So I just think this evens it up just a little bit, especially, after a long debate.
Representative Whitehouse?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would also oppose this amendment because in theory, 2/3 is a high bar and people are going to consider it. But in practice, I can think of, once in the last term that we actually failed to close debate, and every other time, because there's a certain proportion who will just always vote to close debate because they want to get out of here, and that's fine. Sometimes the debates go long and they repeat over and over. Sometimes I'm guilty of that myself. But in practice, when a motion to close debate is called, it almost always passes. So I believe that giving the moderator the discretion to either let a few more people speak or not, because she will know who hasn't spoken yet and also is keeping an eye on the entire discussion. And there have certainly been times where there have been people I spoke to, members I spoke to afterwards, who had key points they wanted to bring up, who had not been able to speak once. And that key point may have been important or relevant, and our moderator may have known that they had a key point, but her hands were tied in order to be able to do that. So I think this is a good potential solution to the problem.
Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I tend to agree, and the other, as far as keeping it the same. Because when somebody requests requests to move the question, you already had people with hands up in the air before that move the question was presented to the moderator. So that just would cut people off that had their hands up before moving the question. So I think it's those people cross the finish line first. That's all.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just to clarify, I actually was on board for the rules amendment, but Representative Whitney made some very good points. I think the unintended consequence of creating this kind of mini break before moving the question could have unintended consequences of moving the question even more frequently than it might otherwise. So Representative Whitehouse raised the point that it had only been vetoed once before, but this would lower the threshold potentially for that. And I also really liked Representative Whitney's point about how it becomes very awkward to reference a rule set from Robert's Rules and then kind of modify it. It's a really kind of weird system in place. We don't have in our own rules what it means to move the question. So in citing something from Robert's Rules and then kind of tweaking it is a little awkward in my opinion. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Representative Miller?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would just like to point out that this was the Temporary Rules Committee. This was bipartisan. This was actually, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but introduced by Representative Flax, and wherever he is. And this is also after a few different people had emailed and commented and said this rule was needed. While I do respect Representative Whitney bringing up Robert's rules, this is something that for our representation, for our situation, I believe is needed just for that protection. And if you look, and I underline this myself, it's the moderator at their discretion. So this doesn't mean that we're going to completely sideline Robert's rules all the time, but it gives that kind of that a little bit of space just in case that it is needed to give those extra few minutes at the discussion. So if the moderator doesn't feel like the discussion is over, she can say no, like this is, so I believe that this was the right decision for our body. Thank you.
Are there any, I already called on Representative Bailey once. I'm happy to call on again, but I'm going to take people who haven't spoken first. Representative Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to say that I respect the concerns of Representative Whitney and Representative Stevenson, but I am in favor of accepting the changes as proposed by the Rules Committee. I think it's a fair middle ground as it stands. So it's, yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Representative Richards?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to state that I was kind of on the fence about this particular one. I think with the proposal to add another 10 minutes, 1 minute per person, helps to resolve concerns that I know many of you have or have brought up. And I hear that. I also hear what Representative Whitney is saying and feel that the 2/3 threshold for moving the question is pretty high. If 2/3 of our body wants to do that, that's a pretty big statement. I would actually probably lean towards leaving the rule as it is at 7.3 and not making this change, but I don't feel very strongly either way. So that's my 2 cents.
Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Request to move the
I
question.
knew it. All right, that's not debatable. I have no one else. This is what I'm going to say. I have no one else who's raised their hand. And it takes a 2/3 vote. So I suppose we'll do a roll call vote.
Yeah, well, I don't think you need a
Oh, no? Okay, all in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll just say your names, okay? Whitney, Chase, Katowski, Flax, you're going to say no, and Eben.
And Lambert and Whitney.
Wait a minute, you guys can't just pop them up again. Lambert, anybody else? I got Whitney. Okay, it passes.
Any abstentions? One abstention.
Oh. Okay. So 1 abstention, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposed.
But I think we had lost 2
We have
people.
30, we have 30, 5, 4, 3, 33 people. Somebody has to do the math.
How many opposed? It does pass. We're just trying to get the numbers.
6 opposed, 1 abstention.
So-
7 minus 33 is 20.
Yeah, 20.
27.
Yeah, 26 in favor, 6 opposed, 1 abstention. That motion passes. So we have a motion on the floor to, what is the motion on the floor? It's an amendment. Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
But now we've called the question, we're going to have a vote.
Well, I just have a clarification question. I can't do that?
Really? No.
Okay.
Shouldn't have.
All right, thank you.
Are you making a clarification of the motion?
Of the rule.
No.
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 No?
Nope.
No. That would have been something to have asked for before. Sorry.
Debate, questions, everything's done.
Shh, no debate, unfortunately. It's not my choice.
Okay, this will be rolled.
So we have a motion on the floor. Wait, do we vote on the amendment separately?
Yes, amendment separate.
So the amendment is to delete the last sentence of Rule 7.3.
And I have to do a roll call.
So
if you don't mind.
What?
I have to do a roll call.
Roll call vote on this one, I understand.
Okay.
Can you put me at the end?
Yes, but what, you might influence someone.
No, but you know what? I'm supposed to be here according to rules.
Yeah. Adams?
Yes.
Bailey? Bailey?
Yes, well, this is for deleting?
This is, the
deleting
motion on the floor is to delete the last sentence of Rule 7.3 of the draft rules
Yeah,
of the
that's what I was-
32nd RTM.
All right, thank you very much. No.
Okay. So, do people know what they were voting on?
Do people know what they're voting on? We're voting to delete
so either
the
you're gonna
last
keep the rules
sentence,
like
which
they are
is,
now?
and I can read it, it says, if the RTM votes to move the question, the moderator may, at their discretion, allow for a maximum of 10 additional minutes of debate, with each RTM member allowed a maximum of 1 minute.
Point of clarification real fast. Are we voting to approve the other rules?
No, just the amendment. We're just voting on deleting the last sentence of the revised
Representative Whitney.
rules, 7.3. Just this 7.3, deleting this. That was the motion on the floor.
Okay, so we have Casper. Okay. Oops. Cassieri? No. Chase?
I'm staying.
Cologne?
No.
Crockett Hubbard? Ooh. Jeez, I wish people would tell us.
Hubbard Baker left here.
I have Baker. I have Luck also. Dean Shinbrot? Lucilla Fleming?
No.
Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Flax?
No.
Fortner?
No.
Foster?
No.
Crickman? Oops. Gauthier? David? Lauren? Hanscom? Okay. Jones?
No.
Katowski?
No.
Lambert?
No.
Miller?
No.
Roscoe, Merritt?
No.
Osman?
No.
Richards?
Abstain?
Rusk? Okay. Silva?
No.
Starkby? Stevenson?
Yes.
Thomas?
No.
Washington?
No.
Wells?
Abstain.
Whitehouse?
No.
Whitney?
Yes.
Eben?
I'm going to abstain too.
Okay. Okay, so 4 in favor, 24 opposed, and 5 abstained.
Okay, that motion fails. 4 in favor, 24 opposed, and 5 abstentions. So we have
Now you have
the
your-
original minutes on the floor. That motion to approve is standing. So this vote will be to approve the minutes without that amendment.
No,
as-
the rules.
Rather,
the
sorry,
rules.
the rules of the 32nd RTM as they were presented by Representative Richards. All in favor of approving the draft rules of the 32nd RTM as presented this evening, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, those rules pass unanimously. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Getting late. All right, so at this point, we have we have budget discussions, and then we have other business. So before we adjourn, I'd like to just ask if there are any items for either of these agenda items. Representative Katowski?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to make a referral to consider whether the cost of having a paving company within the Town of Groton Public Works Department is as cost-effective and efficient as outsourcing paving for the town of Groton. Respectfully submitted, Roseanne Katowski.
Thank you. I think that will get referred to the Public Works Committee.
If you'll send that referral, oh, you've got it in writing. Great. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Adams? Or-
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to make a comment on the committee roster and the incorrect spelling of my first name.
Sorry. It's probably completely my
Yes, it's
fault.
Karen with an I.
I just, is it Karen with an E? Oh, no.
What is it?
A, that's K-I, K-A-R-I-N.
Apologies. And I just want to note that Representative Foster has agreed to be the town council liaison.
Yay. Great.
He may ask for help at some point, but we'll wait till he asks. Town Manager Burt?
I just want to comment on the request for the paving, that we're going into budget season. We can't tie up a lot of the staff time on things that aren't directly with the ongoing budget stuff, so it might be mostly just an internal, look among RTM members.
Okay.
And to remind that RTM does not give work to staff.
Exactly.
So,
If there's any documents that have ever kind of investigated that, though, it would be helpful to just forward them to that committee, to the chair, or to the town clerk, and she can forward it. Representative Osman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd also like to make the correction, too, for my last name. It's
Sorry.
actually spelt with 2 N's instead of 1. Thank you.
Apologies.
Apologies accepted.
Any other corrections to your names? Because I didn't actually, I would have checked it much more carefully if I knew it was going to be just presented to you like this. I have to be honest. These were my cheat sheet notes. Representative Hanscom?
Yeah, there's an extra D at the end of my name.
Got it. Got it. Perfect. And I see another typo here. Representative DeCillier Fleming?
So it's Jen with one
This
N.
has not been publicized. This is only for this body. It's not been put on the internet. This is fresh off the press.
And I didn't mean this to go to you. I just sent this to the town clerk, so she would, I thought.
Be interested in knowing.
I'll email with you mine because there's a couple.
Yeah,
There's-
Sorry.
No one else has seen this. This is just yours. It'll be right on the.
This is me just going from my brain, which
on the
apparently
internet.
isn't that good. Any other spelling errors, please let me know. I want you to know for the committees that, there are constraints in selecting. I tried to give everyone, and worked with Representative Mello Miller and Representative Flax to get everyone their first choice, and unfortunately that wasn't always possible. If there's something that's egregiously wrong and you are really not, you were put there mistakenly, I can perhaps do some tinkering with everything but finance, which is really structured difficultly. It's difficult to change that because that has more structure on it than any other committee. So,
I just want to remind members, if you changed your email, can you let me know? Because I only have what you've given me so far, so that we're on those. Well, I think I'm okay so far. If everybody's been getting our emails and we're all set, but if you decide to change it, please let us know, because the town manager needs it, his staff needs it, and the floor leaders, so.
yeah, and then the other point I would just bring up is that we did, the town manager did hand out sheets for committee preferences, and I didn't, not all members returned that sheet. Even though the committees have been created, the sheets have a purpose beyond just creating these sheets, because they do ask for potential conflict of interest, and those are important to know when we're voting, because you really can't vote on budgets that you might benefit from materially. So if you haven't filled out that form, you must fill it out and you must give it to the town clerk, okay? And you can give it to me as well, because I need a copy as well. So that would be helpful. And I did reach out to a few, but I still am missing quite a few, so thank you. Anyway, is there any other discussion? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Karen with an eye.
Karen and Catherine. So that motion is all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?